So welcome everyone to this introductory panel on International Women's Day and this discussion on educating girls, empowering women, and ending violence against women and girls, the 3 E's that we heard about yesterday as well. I'm joined by 4 very distinguished women leaders who are working towards achieving these goals in their respective fields. So let me just start with an introduction. I'll start from there. Ms. Shahnaz Wazir Ali is a prominent educationist, social activist, and former special assistant to the Prime Minister of Pakistan on social sectors. She has been a vocal advocate for girls' education and has played a pivotal role in shaping education policies in Pakistan. She has also been deeply involved in primary, promotive, and preventive health programs in the public sector and as well as the private sector. In all these positions, she has championed women's rights, legislation, and development. Ms. Shahnaz Wazir Ali was awarded the Sitara Imtiaz in 2016 for her services in education. Welcome, madam. Ms. Mehnaz Akbar Aziz is a member of the National Assembly and also the Parliamentary Secretary for Law and Justice, a staunch advocate of human rights. Ms. Mehnaz Akbar Aziz has tabled historic legislation relating to children, women, and minorities, and we'll be hearing about that a little bit later. Ms. Mehnaz Akbar Aziz has spearheaded also the establishment of the Parliamentary Caucus on Child Rights and is the global co-chair of the International Parliamentary Education Network. So, welcome, Mehnaz. Dr. Nafisa Shah is a member of the National Assembly since 2008 and has been actively involved in legislation related to education, advocating for policies that promote access to quality education for all. Dr. Nafisa Shah has also served as the Nazim of District Khairpur from 2001 to 2007. She served also as the chair of the National Commission for Human Development and General Secretary for the Women's Parliamentary Caucus between 2008 and 2013. Thank you. And Dr. Zeba Sattar, who's sitting here with me, is the country director of the Population Council in Pakistan, where she oversees one of the largest council offices and a diverse program of technical assistance, research, and capacity building. She has over 25 years of experience specializing in social science research and its application in programming and planning. Prior to joining the Population Council, Dr. Sattar was the Chief of Research in the Demography Division with the Pakistan Institute for Development Economics. In 2006, Dr. Zeba Sattar received the Tamgha Imtiaz from the President of Pakistan in recognition of a public service to the development sector in Pakistan. I welcome you all. So, let me start with you, Ms. Shahnaz Wazir Ali. You have an illustrious career both in government and in the private sector and are known for your services in education. What motivated you to pursue a career in education, and what has been your proudest achievement so far? And also I want to mention, some of us heard yesterday that Ms. Shahnaz Wazir Ali also was the head of the education task force when this whole decade of education reforms started.
Thank you very much, Saima, and I'm extremely pleased to be here with my colleagues on the panel, as well as many, many familiar faces in the audience, to talk about my education experience and then maybe to take it to a larger scale or level by sharing with you how it connected over the years with the larger efforts that many people have made across Pakistan for education sector reform. So let me go back many, many, many decades, although this time we are looking at the decade of learning. But my university education was not, my degree was not in education. It was in mass communication a very, very long time ago. And this was just in the year that the PTV was set up in Pakistan. So I'm going to date myself by telling you that I got my bachelor's in 1964, and perhaps many people here were not born at that time. But I did my mass communication, and interestingly at that time, it was from an American university. They had a program which was education through mass communication. Of course, I lost that thread in multiple years after that, but when I came back to Pakistan, I couldn't find a proper, suitable job in mass communication. And instead, because of my parents, since my mother was in education, they persuaded me that perhaps it would be a good idea that you went out and did some voluntary work in the education sector first. So that's how I got involved. And my first experience was in the Liari School in Karachi, in the government school, which was literally a one-room school. I think that may resonate because Pakistan, for many, many decades, has had many one- or two-room schools. It was just on a dirt street, and there was an open sewage line that ran next to it. So I learned many things at that time. What I subsequently learned in formal development forums, how important it was to have the right environment. The school had absolutely, forget a latrine or anything else. It didn't even have desks and chairs for the kids to sit on. The fans and lights were not working. The room was broken down. And the teacher came in late. At that time, many of the children didn't even have, they just wore a shirt and no shalwar underneath, and many of them didn't even have shoes. So the indicators of poverty that I learned about much later actually stared me in the face at that time, but I didn't connect it with anything because it was my first experience. So why am I relating that? Because I think each one of us has had that first experience that has propelled us into a commitment. And that's the commitment that I started with. I taught there for about 6 months. I don't think I taught the children very much, very frankly, but it was an effort that I made because I just went there and felt that I should do this, because if I don't do it, what will happen to these kids of 25, between 17 and 25 kids? And there were multiple things that I can now connect, and over the years I've connected them clearly. When we talk about demand for education, we say this is not a demand side issue, it's a supply side issue. So there it was, right there. Parents had sent their children to the school, regardless of the fact that there was virtually no school. There was one class in which ages between 4 and 10 and 12 were sitting. Of course, the system didn't provide a proper teacher. Forget a trained teacher, it provided no facilities, and certainly that meant facilities, suitable environment, which subsequently, of course, we formalized in very sophisticated development lingo and terminology. But all the things that we are grappling with today actually were in that microcosm. And over the years, then, of course, I started working in low-income schools for a while. Before then, I started taking on some more formal positions in some private sector schools, and subsequently, several years later, through the Women's Action Forum and the movement for restoration of democracy, I moved into a broader arena when we came out and to stand for our rights as equal citizens. So I think there are points in everybody's life, and each one of us can probably point back, identify those entry points. And that's really what has connected, has stayed with me all my life. So if I go and see schools in Balochistan, and having been in public policy positions and a parliamentarian and special assistant to the Prime Minister, whenever I think of education sector reform, I think of that school, and I think of villages, far-flung areas in Balochistan, at the top of a little hill or a mountain, deep in the valley, out in the vast desert, in the congested slum areas, and in villages, rural communities, and low-income communities of cities, that have had no access, no facilities, no proper materials, no support, and of course the whole idea of learning achievement, which is what we focused on. That was the central goal at that time. How do you teach children? How are they going to learn literacy, numeracy, basic skills, reading skills? I just want to take one more minute. Maybe I'm taking too much time, but just to connect it. Later on, because of looking at larger scale, the arguments that are marshaled for education of girls are certainly, I mean, they're so strong, so powerful, and they're indisputable. But those arguments have gone well beyond just the learning argument, just the skills and learning and knowledge-based argument. They have gone into the social rate of return argument, the economic argument, the health argument, the argument for social cohesion, the argument for economic empowerment, the argument for a girl's autonomy. All of these things have, they've been identified through our forums, through dialogue, and through debate. So I think there is a link all the way through, no matter where we all started and whatever each one of us is doing, because you begin to add to the depth of knowledge by saying that there are strong economic reasons for us to invest in girls' education. We all know it. You have the data. There are very, very strong women empowerment reasons to invest in girls' education. So I think that the arguments are there, and I've often advocated that at education sector forums, who are the stakeholders that we need at the table? And we need the economic ministers here. We need the development ministers here. We need those people who can understand that if you don't invest in girls' education, there is no way you can do anything else with the economy, anything else with monetary and fiscal systems, but unless you invest in girls, you're not going to have human capital development in Pakistan. So I think I'll just stop there.
Thank you so much. Those are very powerful comments, and we'll take those back. Miss, let me turn to you next, Mehnaz Akbar Aziz. You have been working as a strong proponent of education your whole life, both in your professional as well as now in your public representation roles. And lately you've tabled and successfully passed a couple of legislations. Could you tell us about that, and what do you see as some of the challenges in enforcing those legislation?
Thank you so much. Bismillah Rahmanir Rahim. Everyone has a story to tell. I was enjoying Shehnaz's story, and I was relating to Shehnaz's story. So I'm an accidental parliamentarian. I got into parliament when my husband was disqualified, and I was his covering candidate, but won with a very large margin of votes, 110,000 or so. So prior to that, I was working in the education sector. I had my own organization, Children's Global Network, and rewind a little bit, I started my work with the National Rural Support Program, whereby I had a degree in anthropology, development studies from Sussex. And when I used to go to communities, I would think of, am I just going to count women because I was doing gender and development, or I'm going to do something more substantial? And then I started seeing that, all those good 30 years ago, education, and especially girls' education, was like a big challenge, and women's literacy was a big challenge. So I decided to then turn to and focus on education. A couple of years later, I was very lucky to work with Dr. Akhtar Hamid Khan and Orangi Pilot Project, whereby I was working with the Asia Foundation, and we gave a credit line to finance private education. And for those people in Orangi isn't recognized by the government of Sindh. So that was very successful, and then I started my own organization, worked in all of Pakistan. So my big strength was, when I came into the parliament, that I know the fabric of Pakistan and the schools in Pakistan. So, and I see so many faces in this audience who have helped me out, who have been my colleagues, Tahir is here, you know, in Asia Foundation days, we were going into Miyawali schools and all that, with every meeting with every student, meeting with every teacher, meeting with every girl that is out of school. But one thing that stands with me, the image that stands with me is the schools in Orangi, you know, those schools at the jo chhat pe banaye hue ne, shed dal ke, wo schools hote hain, and a school in Tharparkar, when there were no roads to Tharparkar. And I was working with Bambeli, we were financing education. My portfolio was to finance education. So, fast forward to 2018, I come into the parliament, and I'm sitting in the parliament my first few days, and I'm looking around, and I'm feeling very fidgety because I was at the top of my work with Children's Global Network. And here we are doing political speeches. And I'm just saying that how do I turn myself into this kind of a parliamentarian? I'm getting very anxious. So I turn to friends like Nafisa and say that, Nafisa, there is a dilemma. Please help me, give speeches like this, because I want to be a prominent parliamentarian. And then, you know, the good advice that I get from my friends is that stick to what you are doing. You know, just your strengths. So from here, I'll tell you what I did. I did goal setting for myself, and then I looked around, and what I noticed was that in the parliament, nobody talked about children. A human being, a citizen of Pakistan is recognized, a girl or a boy or a young man, woman is recognized at the age of 18 when they give a vote. Before that, there was no mention. So I started with questions and resolutions and all of that, and all of this, you know, we were supporting each other. Friends like Nafisa, and I was very lucky to be surrounded by good people and getting advice from Tahir and Rabi. Arshad Saab is here. You know, my first bill on corporal punishment, he drafted with me because I didn't have any support. I had to shut down my organization because of conflict of interest. So, you know, slowly, people, the parliamentarians started recognizing that, you know, children do exist before the age of 18. So my first goal was to do prohibition of corporal punishment, because it keeps girls away from schools as well. Tabled the bill, took 4 long years. The hardest thing in the parliament is to table a bill and then to lobby for it, bipartisan manner, and to get it passed, then to get the rules, and then to get the rules enacted. Second bill, which is very important, and this bill, you know, on corporal punishment says, baal khechna, noochna, you know, beating, this, that, and the other. Every little detail is there. But we didn't keep the punishments very strong. I'll tell you why. Because you don't have to be afraid of. The law has to be there to prevent you from doing that, to mark that you are doing something very wrong. Second bill, protection of domestic workers. Very quickly, it prohibits, it's from Islamabad Capital Territory, it prohibits children under 16 years to be hired. It has more rights for all the domestic workers, but this is a big win, getting the rules made now. Third, I have 4 points to make here. Third, child rights caucus. For 4 years, I advocated for a child rights caucus, because we have to take children as a whole, not child protection, not child sexual abuse, not child, once things get really out of hand, we have to recognize from the day of birth. So the parliamentarians are not, and especially girls, not only girls and then going into minorities. So it's not that parliamentarians don't want to, but it's just that they need to be nudged towards that. That this, you can do a level of effort into your own constituencies, and these are some things that you can do, these are some things that you can advocate. And today I tell you that I feel that Parliament has changed. There are a lot of people talking about girls' education, there are a lot of people talking about all these concerns. So it's really changed. My 4th point is, so the Child Rights Caucus is going to look at education, health. So as legislators, what we do oversight, we do legislation, we have enough legislations, we will do it. But after the floods, and with the inflation, IMF, I I'm afraid that education will take a hit in terms of budgets. It already has taken a hit. So what we do is Child Rights Caucus will start negotiating for budgets, looking at budget figures before the budgets. Just to give you an example. The fourth point that I have is that in our constituency, because it's my husband's constituency, but I happen to be, looking after it right now. In our constituency, it is the rate of literacy for girls and women is 85%. 85%. It's the Kerala of Pakistan, and that's Shakargarh. And how it happened, I'm going to tell you the power of a good parliamentarian, the power of a good member of National Assembly representing you in the National Assembly and making things work. There's a lot of responsibility that MNAs have, and Nafisa will also be talking about that. But for my father-in-law was very, very focused. So it's not just women who will do work for women, but he was very focused on education, making government schools work. So the government schools are functioning so well. And I meet with women who are going to USA for PhDs, they're chemists, they're doctors, they're all that. It's amazing. We need to do a case study on Shakargarh. That what happened, how can we replicate it to the other side? And my last point is women can really make a difference. At this point in the parliament, women are doing 40% of business. And the responsibility, because I am not going to disaggregate girls from boys at this point, because both are vulnerable in the education sector, girls more so than boys. But, women are more sensitive. Women parliamentarians are more sensitive and more committed, more passionate about children, because you can never separate women from children. And I hope that the parliament will continue doing that, and it's the political will. All the deliberations that we are doing here today should come to the parliament. It should be shared with the parliamentarians, because then it will go into the constituencies and into the making plans. Whenever plans are made, it would be understood that this is so. The difference between all of the different stakeholders has to be narrowed to becoming one, and recognizing that political will is something that is very, very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mehnaz, and it's wonderful to have a parliamentarian championing education legislation in Parliament. I will move on to you, Dr. Nafisa Shah, next. And, as a member of the National Assembly and also having worked at all 3 tiers of the government, what do you think is the role of public representatives in educating girls, empowering women, and ending violence against women?
बहुत शुक्रिया साइमा. मैं कुछ उर्दू में बात करूँगी, and then I can transition to English for the mixed, I understand that there are people here who can't understand Urdu, लेकिन कुछ सबसे पहले तो मैं आज के दिन के मौके पर ख़वातीन का आलमी दिन है, और आप सबको मुबारकबाद and happy Women's Day to everybody. And it's an honor to be sitting on the stage when the most of the floor is full of educationists, and I take pride that it's an honor to address or talk in this panel. मैं भी अपनी origin story मेरे ख्याल से बात कर लेती हूँ, because एक context set की है शहनाज ने. तो मेरी origin story ये है कि मैं उन बच्चियों में से हो सकती थी जिन बच्चियों का आज जिक्र हो रहा है. वो बच्चियाँ जो स्कूल नहीं पहुँच सकीं या जिन्होंने बस मिस की. I could easily have been one of those girls, because हमारा ख़ानदान एक सैयद घराना. My mother was from the tribal community and my father was सैयद. और उस वक्त तो सैयद ख़ानदान, यहाँ पर बहुत सारे लोग सिंध के बैठे हुए हैं, तो सैयद ख़ानदान की एक आइडेंटिटी होती थी कि अपनी ख़वातीन को वो छुपाते थे, स्कूल नहीं भेजते थे. That was a whole part of the mystique of the Sayyid families. So I could have easily missed the bus. My mother was illiterate, my sisters were not literate, and, but my mother decided to break the glass ceiling. And she made that journey, and she thought उस वक्त क्योंकि हमारे इलाकों में इतनी अच्छी facilities बच्चियों के लिए नहीं होती थीं, and she was determined, by the way, she was determined that not any education would settle. She wanted some kind of a global education for girls, for her girls, and she said मुझे अंग्रेजी स्कूलों में बच्चों को डालना है. Maybe that would not go very well with the politics today, but that was her passion. And then she made this journey alone with her 7 children. She made this journey, and without informing my father. My father was in the city and she was supposed to stay in the village or the town. And she made that journey, took her girls, and her objective was, I have 2 brothers, but her objective was the girls' education. So I didn't miss the bus. And I got into like the best education. And since then, I've had several lives, several incarnations. But my first incarnation was, as a teacher, as a tutor, as a teacher, then as a journalist, then an academic. And you made a very rich introduction. Thank you very much. But one of the credits that I take pride in as an achievement, or somebody in my family who broke the glass ceiling, was that I became the first PhD in the family. And then I went on to get education in Oxford University. I got a PhD in anthropology, and I studied gender-based violence, something that is really rooted in the environment in which I grew up in was gender violence in Upper Sindh. So, I have a book to my credit that's on gender violence, honor-based violence. And then the present part of my several lives is as a public representative. And here, of course, what we face is, obviously what I want to give back to my community is something that as I said, I was one of the girls who could have easily missed education. And this is something that I do in Khairpur, in my constituencies, to ensure with whatever resources I have or whatever strength I have, is to ensure that we can do something for education for girls, particularly for girls. So I'm intimately connected with the people of my area, particularly women and girls. I look after we have a family trust, so at the personal level as well we do this. We look after girls' education, we adopt schools, and at the public level, as a public representative, of course, I try to voice women's issues in Pakistan. On a general issue, I do want to raise 1 or 2 points. We are now, Pakistan is really at a, if you look at the headlines, especially in the international media, questions like, is Pakistan dying? Is Pakistan dead? Will Pakistan survive? Is Pakistan on the brink? Is Pakistan on the precipice? So there's an economic crisis, and there are screaming headlines about, Pakistan, wherever it stands. But with the governance crisis at hand and an economic crisis at hand, I think one of our concerns, at least my concerns, and what I see around me in my intimate connections with the people of my area, is that there is a women's crisis in Pakistan too. And this is something that we must face if we have to address the other crises. And I would again endorse what my colleagues have said before me, is that we really have to come up with the answer to what I call the women's question. It may sound a very socialist, 70s lingo, but actually there is a women's question in Pakistan. And that question is, today when we are looking at the scary statistics about Pakistan, and there are many, one of the scariest statistics is on the women of Pakistan. The huge gender gap everywhere in all aspects, whether it's financial inclusion, whether it's access to health, access to education, the girls' education that we are talking about today. And unfortunately, I don't see a policy focus. Something that we speak about all the time as parliamentarians is, we need a policy focus on women in every aspect, which we are missing. And this is one of the setbacks has been in these
especially I think this happened in post-Zia period, is that the Pakistan's civil society, which was the most active advocate of women's rights, is also it's scattered, it's been weakened. So women really, and this is the girls' education is a part of the overall context of women's rights in Pakistan. It's my 15th year in the parliament, and I have to report that yes, I agree with Mehnaz. We've done a lot of fantastic legislation. We have been reasonably good advocates of women's rights. We have fought in the parliament for our rights and for gender rights and for child rights, and Mehnaz is very, very passionate about this. But some of the things that are very basic we have not been able to do for women. One of this is, of course, the domestic violence legislation. And there is an ideology behind it, which is something that, it's again that women's question that I'm talking about. It's that, there is a fierce opposition to legislating on domestic violence. Why? Because women, the private space is sacred. Whatever happens in the private space, the family is sacred. Women may be battered to death, but we will not question what's happening in the private spaces. It's something that's really disturbing. This is something that we have to break. And as women, we have to continue to fight to legislate for domestic violence. Because as a person who studied violence against women, most of the violence takes place inside the homes where women are supposed to be most secure. But we have, because we've made a sacred box there, we are not able to address this. The other issue is equally disturbing, and it's equally passionately fought by the establishment. And I'm not talking about the state establishment, but I'm talking about the societal establishment. There is a societal establishment. There is a cultural establishment. And the other issue is the marriage age for women, the 18-year age, and that I think Zeba would take up, and I'll stop here. She can continue with that. That is fiercely, fiercely, fiercely opposed. These are our two challenges. If we want women to have an autonomous space as women in their own right, rather than, a paternalistic state and women as being a patronized minor, which is where we stand today. We are a patronized minor today. Women of Pakistan are cultural minors. And if we have to break that, I think these two legislations, which is a work in progress, is something that, I'm very concerned with. These are the two legislations that we have to fight for. And because there's a huge background to why we need to have these two legislations across. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nafisa Shah. Thank you very much. With that, I will turn to you, Dr. Zeba Sattar, and to a very, very important issue for Pakistan, which is population. And of course, we would also like to hear your own personal journey on this issue. But there are very complex interactions between demography and education as well. And do leave us with some thoughts to ponder on as you add your comments.
Thank you very much, Saima. First of all, I'm really privileged to be on this panel. These are wonderful leaders, and I don't have such a great personal story, except I was always driven by the fact that I was privileged enough to get the education that I agree, Nafisa, you feel that all the time, that everyone deserves. Every girl, every woman deserves, and every man deserves as well in Pakistan, just by virtue of being born in the right family. And I just felt right from when I was doing my master's at the London School of Economics, which happened to be on education and population planning, that I must return to Pakistan. My parents lived abroad. So I think driven by that, and then the population problem, I happened to study demography at the LSE. It seemed like Pakistan really needed, it was the right thing to do, to come and do research in Pakistan. But at the PIDE, I really realized that just doing research and publishing papers really made me personally happy, but it wasn't really benefiting Pakistan or other women, in Pakistan to reach their full potential. And to me, I think the twin problems of girls' education, where we are lagging behind tremendously, and a very, very slow fertility decline are totally interrelated. And the core of the issue, I think, is what Nafisa Shah says. It's the women crisis, it's a female crisis, it's a denial of basic human rights. Along with the legislation that you were talking about, domestic violence, age-at marriage, I think we really should fight back for what was achieved, in the constitutional amendment for universal primary education. Our calculations show us that at the speed at which we are going, and in terms of educational, yes, we have made gains, and we've made gains in reducing fertility, but we will not reach universal primary education, at least by our calculations, till 2070. Is this acceptable to us? I mean, especially the people in this room who have worked so hard. I think there has to be a major intervention. I hate to use the word intervention, but at least something by way of cross-party commitment at this point, that despite the economic crisis, despite the governance crisis, this girls' education, and I think primary education for all children, must be really our 2023 agenda. It's much postponed. But I think in terms of financial commitments, Shahnaz talked about them. I think there's enough funds for a lot of things that are going on in Pakistan. This should be the priority for 2023. But you mentioned, the population education interlinkages. I think obviously if 5 million children are born every year, it's a huge task to get all of them into school. If indeed we were responsive to women's concerns, women in Pakistan, at least 40% say that they did not want the last pregnancy or wanted to postpone it, but were unable to do so. They either end up with abortions, induced abortions with their health complications, or they end up with what we call unwanted children. I know no child is unwanted, but at that particular time, the family felt they could not, 40%. So if we were to bring that 5 million figure automatically, let's say overnight, by a very strong family planning program down to 3 million, the task would be immediately easier. And this is something that could literally happen overnight because these women are ready. And in terms of the opposite, bringing fertility down, I think if we have enough research from Pakistan, and especially from other countries, that when you do get all girls in school, I mean, the powerful effects that happen the other way. I think when you have even primary schooling, but especially if you have at least metric, 8 or 9 years of schooling, this is powerful influence on decisions about marriage, about violence. I'm not saying it's a magic bullet that will solve deep-rooted problems like domestic violence, but certainly you have the power, and certainly about decisions to how many children you want to have and whether you use contraception. So I think the two-way relationship is especially important, but having spent my life on really trying to convince government after government to invest in what is a very low-cost intervention, a very good quality family planning program, and only inchingly made success, I would say if today I had to forget my past and say, what would you advise as the 2023 agenda for the elections and a cross-party commitment to spend an X amount, I would say I would recommend that it should go into girls' schooling rather than. So that's how I would put my priorities, and I think you're running out of time, so I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry to leave you at the end, because this in my mind is really the most important issue that we face, both for education and population. We have about 5 minutes. If I know there are people in the audience. If you have any, we can take one round of questions and then some final comments from all the panelists. I will maybe start here, and then can we get a mic here, please? And then to the lady over there, because it's Women's Day, I will give the two ladies a chance first and then come to you, please.
And then we can sort of take responses at the end. If you can have all the questions. Yes, please.
Yeah, my name is Nabila Firoz. I am a human rights activist and columnist from Lahore. My two questions are from Nafisa Shah. She described in her speech that civil society voices for women's rights are scattered. I want to ask her, like, how does she see the Women March movement in these days? My second question is, on Monday there was a decision by Federal Shariat Court that fixing the age of marriage is the responsibility of state, and there was a petition from Sindh. Someone was doing objection on 18 years of age in Sindh. So the Federal Shariat Court gave a verdict that to fix the age of girls or boys, like for marriage, is a responsibility of state. So is it be a solid evidence for human rights activists, women rights activists, parliamentarians to advocate to end child marriages? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take maybe 2 or 3 more questions, and then we can, a question here.
My name is Mariam Khan, and I'm a program manager at FCDO. My question is for Dr. Zeba as well as Ms. Nafisa Shah. Really inspirational stories, and good to hear that we have done so much being in our capacity. But what do you think is the significance of changing the mindset and also the condition of men in Pakistan to make a significant impact, who essentially are the decision makers for all these women? A lady in a remote village back in KP or back in Balochistan might not be the decision maker for how many children she would want, or if she wants to continue with her education. So what do you think have we done to change the mindset as well as the condition of our men, our fathers, our brothers? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll give the gentleman here a question, and then maybe at the back, 2 more questions, and then we'll end with, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Shiraz Ahmed, the District Education Officer, Mohman from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. I have worked in different districts as a District Education Officer. And just in Mohman, one of the backward district in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So basically, I have a question from Dr. Nafisa Shah. You said that women crisis in Pakistan. Really, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, there is an issue. Basically, the girls' education. So what the mic is?
Can you?
Especially the girls' education in Mohman was very critical. The Malaks need a school for the boys, and they often demand a school for girls, but they don't want to send their children in boys' schools. And girls' schools are not available in the area. So most of the girls are out of the school. And I was trying my best to send the girls to the boys' schools. And still I was afraid that those people may not blame me for developing co-education. So if you were in my place, what you would do at that place in District Mohman? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the last question at the back, or at the back, the last question. Sorry, I'm sorry, we started late and we're running a bit.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Jafar, ex-FCDO. My question is to probably the entire panel. If you could talk a little about the link between putting girls in school, but also women's economic empowerment. In my mind, having an economically viable future can be a big incentive to put your children in school. If you're missing that, how does that incentivize or disincentivize the decision to send your children, especially girls, to school? And how do you begin?
Thank you so much. I'll start with you, Dr. Zeba, and then move in the reverse order.
Yeah, I have the easier question. I think you've hit it on the nail. I think we haven't done enough to influence the mindset, because the ideal family size in Pakistan has remained stagnant, whereas in Bangladesh, India, it's close to 2. Ours remains close to 4, and I think it is mainly male-driven because they don't have the pregnancies. I think it's a desirable, we were discussing this in our office, that yeah, it is ideal to have 4 or 5 children, but I think the reality of actually bearing those children and giving them their full rights is this discongruence. So what we can do is really, I think we've lacked a good communications campaign that can be an influence. But I do think empowerment doesn't come automatically. I think it has to be grabbed. So I think if you enable women to make decisions by having services like lady health workers coming to their house, I think the biggest achievement in the public health arena was led by Shahnaz Wazir Ali, and it was really the introduction of the lady health worker scheme. We found in our research that if there was a lady health worker in the community, it really changed. Also responding to the comment about linking empowerment and education, when you see an avenue, how you would use your education to actually get economic you would be able to earn a living, it really changes. Something has to trigger change to change mindsets, but I think we can add on through communications campaign and provide good services. I think things can change in a community setting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving on to you, Dr. Nafisa.
Thank you very much. I'll try and address a few questions, and then my colleagues can take it from there. One question was on Aurat March and women's movement. It's really painful to see that a few posters would intimidate our, whether I call it social establishment or cultural establishment or state establishment, and I totally disagree with this. I think that, but women's movement in the 80s, interestingly, I don't know how many of you have studied, especially the younger women in the civil society. Although it was a small movement, it was a very strong and strident movement. And that was a time when the political parties went underground, there was a military rule. It was women's movement even stood up against military rules, against powerful establishment. And unfortunately, that generation is now, has grown older. Some of them are not there anymore. And presently, I think one of the biggest problems with Pakistan today is a lack of a strong civil society. It's there, but it's far between, and then it's often a victim of, attacks such as this Aurat movement, not being allowed to march on a Women's Day. It's not encouraging. And farmers' movements, they have been stifled. Students, we have one of the youngest populations in the world, but when I look at universities, the officers have their own organization. They have a voice. The teachers have a voice, but the main consumers of the universities, the students, they do not have a voice. Where is the organized voice of students? So I think one of the failures why we are not able to fight against this conservative wave of conservatism is because we do not have a membership-based popular civil society. And on solutions, how do we address this? I think I came into politics on a progressive party platform exactly for the reason that I thought that this could be like my platform for doing progressive politics. I think Pakistan needs progressive, strong, membership-based political parties because they will be the vehicle of policies. And yes, as Ziva also talked about, how we have to put women at the top of our manifesto and agendas, and in a very strong, coherent manner. Not often, women become like more cosmetic, lip service, okay, legislation for legislation's sake, but we really need to come up with, this is we are far past the hour when, we have to really work overtime to get women into the mainstream. And on the economic side, I was just reading a paper by Karandas which said only 8% women have bank accounts in Pakistan. And that really shows, that's why I said the statistics are scary all around. And economic empowerment is extremely important if we want to have overall empowerment of women.
Thank you so much. Ms. Benaz, would you like to add something?
Yes, I'm going to take the Mohmand one because I visited Mohmand. Or when we talk of Mohmand and when we talk of the agencies and the newly merged districts, we need to think of what's going on in Afghanistan and the girls' education in Afghanistan and how far, I mean, those areas are vulnerable. All of our provinces are very distinct. सिंध बहुत मुख्तलिफ है, पंजाब बहुत मुख्तलिफ है, मगर जब हम खैबर पख्तूनख्वा को देखते हैं, बहुत लोग कहते हैं कि वहाँ पर, ये भी बात मैंने सुनी, मैंने सोशल मीडिया में पढ़ी, that bring Taliban rule into Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and so on and so forth. But what you're talking about, sir, is very intrinsic over there, and it has to change through this nexus of bureaucracy and the elected members. इन दोनों को ये एक negotiation होगी. This is not about one school, one area, one tehsil, but it's across the board in some areas. I have been to schools where in boys' schools girls are sitting in the front 2 rows. पढ़ाई वढ़ाई बिल्कुल नहीं हो रही होती. More is that discomfort, चादर वगैरह इस तरह की चीज़ हो रही थी. I've been to many schools like that in your area. So this whole discussion has to be unpacked and इसको हमें एक public में लाना पड़ेगा कि ये हमें नामंजूर है. This is a political issue. This is a social issue. It's not just the issue of one school. तो और हमें देखिए सोशल मीडिया is a very important tool today. ज़रा सा प्रेशर होता है सोशल मीडिया में तो पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज हिल जाती हैं, बहुत चेंजेस आना शुरू हो जाती हैं, डिस्कोर्स बदल जाता है, चीज़ें विकीपीडिया बंद हुआ, सोशल मीडिया पे शोर हुआ, दूसरे दिन विकीपीडिया खुल गया, क्यों बंद हुआ क्यों खुला वो अलग बात है, ठीक है ना. तो इस तरह से वी आर नॉट टॉकिंग इनफ ऑफ दीज एरियाज जहाँ पर बहुत मुश्किल आते हैं. तो ये हमें करने की ज़रूरत है और आप जैसे ऑफिसर्स को तो मैं सलाम पेश करती हूँ कि आप अपने इलाके को इतनी अच्छी तरह रिप्रेजेंट करें.
Thank you so much. And I will sort of request you, Mr. Nazwaziri, to please help us conclude and leave us with some thoughts on, what you've heard during this session and what can we together as a community do on educating girls, empowering women and ending violence against women and girls.
All right, this is quite a difficult task क्योंकि हमारे सामने जितने पैनल पे ख़वातीन तशरीफ़ रखती हैं उन्होंने अपनी अपनी ज़िंदगी के बारे में बात की है कि उनका पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस क्या था, उनकी स्टोरी ऑफ ओरिजिन किस तरह है, कि लड़कियों की तालीम के हवाले से भी, ख़वातीन के हकूक़ के हवाले से भी, सियासी पहलू क्या है क़वानीन के हवाले से भी. लेकिन मैं ये सोचती हूँ कि हमें ये भी देखना चाहिए कि पाकिस्तान में आखिरकार तब्दीली आई है. वो तब्दीली नहीं जो कि कुछ लोग बात करते हैं, लेकिन तब्दीली आई है इस लिहाज से कि जैसी माइग्रेशन फ्रॉम रूरल एरियाज़, देहात के इलाकों से शहरों की तरफ हो रही है, देयर आर मेजर डेमोग्राफिक शिफ्ट्स इन पाकिस्तान टुडे. And we've all talked about population, we've talked about demography. Dr. Zeba Sattar is the most eminent demographer in Pakistan. And we have seen that there are multiple issues, but there are some large-scale mass impact factors in Pakistan that are changing the social environment and the economic environment. So with more and more people moving into the cities, more and more women are working. They may not be working in positions and getting adequate compensation, but there are more women in the urban centers of Pakistan, and central Punjab is a large urban center. There are more women working in factories, there are home-based workers, they're working in schools, they're working in hospitals, they're working in many, many places. So there is an increase in women at work, but they're not all fully documented. And I think the economic impact of hardship, inflation, is forcing some families to take those decisions. तो कई घरानों में आप देख रहे हैं कि फाइनली जो मर्द हजरात हैं वो कहते हैं कि ठीक है, तुम्हें अगर कहीं नज़दीक कोई काम मिलता है तुम काम कर लो, क्योंकि आजकल हालात इतने मुश्किल हो गए हैं. Economic inflation, economic frustrations and difficulties are there. And so economic factors in countries that are going through a severe economic crisis have very negative and adverse consequences, but they have certain other types of things taking place that we should take note of. So while women still are at risk, and I couldn't agree with my colleague Dr. Nafisa Shah that women are seriously still at risk in Pakistan in almost every way. The small portion of women that have made it through these barriers and have had the opportunities, and some of them have not had the opportunities given to them in an easy environment, but the risks continue. Just now a question was raised about age of marriage. And, we've been battling this for 35 to 40 years. Sindh government was the most progressive and immediately legislated that age of marriage should be 18. Khawateen ki umar shaadi ke liye. Minimum 18 saal ki honi chahiye. उससे चंद दिन पहले, मेरे ख्याल में 2-3 दिन पहले, फेडरल शरीयत कोर्ट ने फैसला किया था कि लड़कियों की जो उम्र है शादी के लिए वो मुनासिब इस्लाम के मुताबिक जो उम्र है वो ये मैच्योरिटी पे आती है. वो मैच्योरिटी 14, 15, 16 साल की हो सकती है. But Sindh took the decision of a civil democratic order and said that we are establishing age 18. And there is a province today which has marriage age at 18. Maybe the Shariat court agrees, doesn't agree, it can say what it wants. So there are a lot of forces at work. And there are certain forces that are also clashing within Pakistan on issues such as the rights of women, the rights of people, the economic rights of women. These are not self-contained environments where when we talk about education, that is only with educationists and within the education sector. यहाँ पे एक political economy है, very strong political economy है in terms of the education economy. And there's a political layer that impacts almost everything along with the cultural layer and the social mindset. And I think all of these are the themes that we have talked about. Yes. So how do we take these challenges up? And I think that clearly all of these challenges are integrated and related. To my mind, the 25A article in the Constitution is only one solitary article which says कि प्राइमरी एजुकेशन सारे बच्चों को एजुकेशन का हक देना चाहिए 5 साल की उम्र से लेकर 16 साल की. तो 25A की जो शिक है आइन की, वो वाहिद अकेली अगर इसी तरह की हम लेजिस्लेशन करेंगे या आइनी तरमीम करेंगे वो काफ़ी नहीं है. So we need actually to work on many fronts, and without civil society, as it has been said here again and again, I think this is a major strand that has come out of it. Change comes from society. It cannot come from established structures. And it should not come from top-down hierarchies. It should come from the people, through the people's representative, and there should be multiple facets of that change then reflected through legislation, but also change in the way we do business in Pakistan, both private sector, public sector, and government, and the establishments. So I think there were many, many strands here in everybody's discussion, and I hope I've...
Thank you so much. It was a very rich conversation, and with that I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to join us here today. Thank you so much.
I know, she's just gone outside.
Huh?
Judith's just gone outside. She's gone to go. Yeah, I need Judith here.
Oh, then they'll go for tea.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, do you want to just do a bit of a summary?
Yeah. Thank you everyone. Our next session we'll be talking about the importance of foundational learning for children. And I would like to invite Ms. Judith Herbertson, who is the head of the FCDO's Girls Education Department, to kick off this session, please.
Good morning, everybody, once again, and thank you so much for coming back for the second day. I realise we're running very late, so I'm just going to keep talking and hope we can motor through this. We have an incredibly important session coming up on foundational learning. First of all, happy International Women's Day, and thank you to our eminent speakers who have set us off so well on this agenda. We're going to talk in the next hour about foundational learning for all. This is basic literacy, basic numeracy, and socio-emotional skills. In other words, the building blocks that all children everywhere, girls and boys, rural and urban, nourished, malnourished, able-bodied, disabled, need in order to unlock the doors to the higher levels of learning and to their futures. This is critical no matter where children are studying, what the language of instruction, and what's going on in the classroom. That has to be the major focus. It's also needed in order to persuade parents that their children are actually learning in school. There is no point in parents scrimping and saving to send their children to local schools, low-cost private schools, or any other kind of school if 2 years down the line they realise their children have not even learnt how to read. That's the point when children, and in particular girls, drop out because they're pulled out by their parents, because there is no reward coming from the efforts that their parents are making. And so the girls go into child labour, they go into domestic work at home, they go into early marriage, they start having children, and all those doors close. We have some eminent panellists and discussants for you today. I'm going to read all their names in the interests of speed and ask them all to come and join us on the stage, and then we will start off with the first presentation. So we have Dr. Bela Raza Jamil, Commissioner from the Education Commission. We have Ms. Ana Penido from the Lehman Center in Brazil. We have Mr. Riaz Kamlani, who is the Executive Vice President for the Citizens Foundation. We have Mr. Salman Naveed, who is CEO for the Pakistan Alliance for Maths and Science. And we have Ms. Rifat Jabin, who is the Director for Academics at the Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training. Thank you very much to all of you for giving us your time. And I'm going to ask Bela to start. We have two presentations, the first one from Bela, the second one from Anna. We are under pressure of time to try to get through this whole session in less than an hour, but we do want to hear what they have prepared. And I then have a question for each of the others, and we want to hear what they're going to say. If we have time, we'll come to the audience for questions. If we don't, please make the most of what you're listening to. Bela, the floor is yours.
एक दफ़ा फिर इंटरनेशनल वुमेंस डे मुबारक हो, ख़वातीन का दिन है और होप आदमी भी उतनी सेलिब्रेट करें और कोई अहद करें कि लड़कियों के लिए तालीम जो है, जो अभी ज़ेबा ने कहा कि लड़कियों के लिए 10 या 12 साल की तालीम जो है उसको बिल्कुल मुमकिन बनाए. So without much ado, I want to start. I don't know if the presentation is there. I just wanted to set the context, and I have is it ready? So I'll just keep saying next. So I just thought it's important for us to see Okay, what is happening in this whole week? Wherever we've gone, we've been taking photographs of girls in school. I saw girls at primary desperate to go on to middle. I saw girls in middle, and we actually went there. I think Rachel Hinton was there, Anna Penido was there. We can't see it here. And they said, ma'am, we are in the second shift. You know, one of the best stories to tell from the decade of learning was that the second shift schools or the upgradation of schools, and said, but we finished grade 8, now what will happen? So the girls were very keen to see, but this was a school which upgraded from primary to middle. But now we are in grade 8, now what? There is space in the school, can't we be in grade 9? It's that kind of flexibility that is needed if we indeed want to address the bottlenecks of education and learning in Pakistan. I just thought, because we are talking about, is that working? Yeah, sorry. I don't know what I'm doing. Because we're looking at the bottlenecks of learning, ये क्या bottlenecks हैं? और आई थिंक असर से बेहतर शायद हमारे पास कोई भी डेटा सेट नहीं है जो हमें पिछले 12 साल का डेटा देता है. सो 10 years of data lets us know. और अगर आप सिर्फ नीचे देखें तो अगर 2010 में हमने जब असर किया था और हमने क्लास 3 में देखा कि रिजल्ट्स क्या थे, अब याद रखिए कि असर का जो टूल है, इट्स ओनली ग्रेड 2 लेवल कॉम्पिटेंसीज फॉर literacy, for basic Urdu, Pashto, Sindhi, arithmetic, as well as English. और अगर 2010 में हमारे पास 21% क्लास 3 के बच्चे क्लास 2 का बेसिक कुछ पढ़ सकते थे कहानी, तो हम अगर आगे चलते हैं 2019 तक, जब हमारे पास एक्चुअली कोविड नहीं आया था, तो तब हमारे पास 18% बच्चे फिर उधर ही अटके हुए हैं. और फिर जब कोविड आ जाता है और 2021 में फिर सर्वे होता है तो वो ड्रॉप करके 15 हो जाता है. मगर ये जो फाउंडेशनल लर्निंग की, अब ये सोचने की बात है, ये जो फाउंडेशनल लर्निंग का एक बुनियाद जो है, एक नीचे जैसे बॉटम गिर जाता है, मतलब पैंदा ही नहीं है, खाना कैसे पकेगा, हांडी कैसे पकेगी, तो 5वीं में हम पकड़े जाते हैं फिर, क्योंकि हमारे पास बच्चे फिर वही 45% और 50% हैं जो कि कर सकते, पढ़ सकते हैं क्लास 2 की लेवल की रीडिंग. और आप ऊपर चले जाइए क्लास 8 में, फिर हमारे पास 26% बच्चे जो क्लास 2 की नहीं पढ़ सकते. सो यू आर caught again and again and again. And the issue of learning doesn't just stop at that. Then it becomes, as somebody said, actually quality has to be seen as equity. And learning has to be seen as equity. So what then happens is then we have the sad tragedy of 64% primary net enrollment rate, 37% middle enrollment rate. I mean, मतलब अफसोस नहीं है आज. और 27% as metric net enrollment rate. और अगर if you combine the challenge of gender and wealth here and poverty, can you imagine what will happen? And what happens in district after district like Momand, if you begin to disaggregate this data, it is even more scary. But in terms of a pause, okay, what are we looking at? 5th most population country in the world, Anna, we've crossed your country. You are now less than us, okay? So in highest population, to reinforce Zeba Sattar's point of view, I mean, we are producing 5 million children every year. No matter what we do, it's like, it's scary. We have 2.1% population growth rate, our headcount poverty is 38.3%, and our multidimensional poverty index is 52%. This is 2022 data. Data matters. Because when you look at this data, ये जो evidence है ना, please इसको ना छोड़े. हमारे लोग दूर-दूर district से, घोटकी से, इधर-उधर से सब आए हुए हैं. प्लीज ये सोचें कि आपके पास आदाद और शुमार इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट है कि जब आप हक अपने मांगने जाते हैं 25A के हवाले से. We talked about 25A, the constitutional fundamental right to education. Sorry, it's a disaster. We've got laws, the most progressive. By the way, Sindh and Punjab have got the most progressive law in that. But it has not been implemented to date. Even Sindh has got the rules made, the only province. Fayda kya? SDG 4, where will it go? Our parliamentarians have sworn commitments to it. And yesterday I was celebrating, and we should all celebrate, the first ever education parliamentarian caucus has been inaugurated yesterday, beautiful secretariat. We are celebrating because we want parliamentarians to know these kind of facts, to be able to push for foundational learning. This is what it is, Shahnaz, the bottom drops out. You know, then what? I'll move fast after this. So what happens? The people like us who are creating public goods, thank you to FCDO, thank you to UNICEF, thank you to the government, thank you to many people who participate in this. Year after year, we produce this report as not just data for the sake of data, not big data, because it is big data. We're talking about 300,000 kids assessed every year, and district by district. But what happens is, this becomes a public good. Why is it a public good? Anyone, and I have great pride that anyone can download the tool and use it. Anyone can download the raw data and use it for their MPhils and PhD, and it gives us great pride. Faisal is here, many people are here who say, you know, our people use your data. Great, you know, people say, we did your PhDs because of this data. Great. Somebody says, we use this data for the sector plan. In the Economic Survey of Pakistan, Chapter 10 uses this data. This is the public good that FCDO and DFID has supported. So thank you to you, but everything is there, including the tools. Jisko dil kare, wo download kare. But you know, it is important to see ki, acha, what happens? Acha, is data ko kaun aur istemal karta hai? वर्ल्ड बैंक ने लर्निंग पॉवर्टी क्रिएट करी, एक नया कॉन्सेप्ट टू ड्रॉ अटेंशन, क्योंकि कभी एक शॉक वैल्यू चाहिए. लर्निंग पॉवर्टी क्या चीज होती है? Every 10-year-old in or out of school being able to read with comprehension, can do, cannot do. Pakistan in 2019 was at 75%. During COVID, again they did an estimate, we are now roughly around 80%. Yani ke 1 in 5 children can only read with comprehension. I mean, yeah, kya hai? And if we today do not get up from here to say we are committed to foundational learning, well then when will we do it? And you know, the issue of this business of 5 million children block, I wish Zeba would have said that only 42% children, and this is for all our parliamentarians and everywhere, jahan jahan aap log hain, 42% birth registration rate of children under 5. Kitne log hain yahan pe? Do you know the DOs are here? And also they know teachers and principals will not take children in because they do not have that wretched Bay form. They said, ha madam, enrolled but unregistered. Enrolled, I mean double unregistered. Not birth registration, not school enrollment registration. Where is that child? I mean, kitna piecenge ek bacche ko? Which means that the entitlement then gets completely denied when it comes to protection, health, or anything else. Foundation literacy is the ability to read with comprehension. Kya hai ye? Letter identification, reading words, paras, stories, etc. And also similarly on numeracy. And these are aligned to our national curriculum, our provincial curriculum, and also to what I will share just now, that you are looking at SDG 4.1.1a, the lower primary, and it says the proportion of children in grades 2 and 3 achieving at least a minimum proficiency in reading and mathematics by sect. So Pakistan has to make a selection of what it means by global proficiency level, how does it align to the global, to the national curriculum, and how we agree on the indicators. ऐसे नहीं होता कि बस ये है, नहीं, आप agree करें, आप करें. This is the only way that we peg it. And I have got, and you'll get the presentation so you'll know what the global proficiency learning standards say. By the way, the GPL standards are totally mapped to the single national or the national curriculum of Pakistan. ये भी नहीं कोई कह सकता, पता नहीं कहीं बाहर का है, नहीं बाहर का नहीं है, आप ही का है. So with that is this whole issue of social motion learning. हमारे बच्चे इतने सताए हुए हैं, पिसे हुए हैं. Stories make them feel happy, make them feel more confident. Co-creation and giving agency to them makes them delighted. And if they're learning, they're on top of the world. And you'll see a child when they're old. So I just want to end with the last 2 slides. So आपने देखा होगा कल और परसों हम लोग ढेरों जप्पियां डाल रहे थे. We were a whole group of people. We are the South people. We say many people. There are 15 fellows who are all around here. The moment and there are secretaries in it. So civil servants, civil society organizations, big ones. You know, people like us, sar phire hue log. People like Riaz Kamlani Saab, Faisal Bari is there. Dr. Fawzia Khan is there, so many. So we decided, and also from academia, कि let's go and see other countries. Sobral में बड़ा कुछ सुना है. Brazil ने हमारे जैसा पागल मुल्क है. वहाँ पे military dictatorships भी नहीं. रोज तब्दीलियाँ होती हैं हुकूमतों की. Manic politics. In modern politics, how do they get foundation learning? Why can't we get it? So हम लोगों ने सोचा कि हम क्यों नहीं फैसला करते to do something in foundation learning. And we said, let's go to creating learning laboratories with all children learning up to grade 3 level. We have done a full data of every household with 3 to 16-year-olds already. And we are now trying to see how can we adopt a delivery approach. I'm using the delivery approach because I was the Education Commission's commissioner, and that's one of our big pieces. How can we track action? We find out how many children are out of school, how many children are not learning, and for village by village do it so that it is in a union council. Now, if we can create 1,000 union councils like this, we are in business in Pakistan. And there's a whole lot of strategies on that. And what happens is, what is needed? We need coalitions. Pakistan cannot do with one lot of people, this is Sarkar, this is non-Sarkar. No, we need coalitions, media, everyone together. We need reforms which are evidence-based. We need to be committed to foundation learning. Foundation learning होगी तो lifelong learning है. अगर आपको पढ़ना लिखना नहीं आता, कुछ नहीं आएगा. So that is so important. And then we need to be able to see how do we create this as a public good. That is really what I wanted to share with you. Okay, we are creating this pilot so that we are able, I don't want to call it a pilot, we're creating a movement. आप सबको हम दावत देते हैं to be in this movement for foundation learning, but understand what it is about. And take whatever you want. We are here to offer our services, all of us, and join hands wherever we are. तो ये कोई छुपी रुकी बात नहीं है, किसी का project नहीं है. This is a journey of passion and commitment and outcomes. But it has to be evidence-based. And we have to show it. No matter how many political people come, please don't say, nahi ji, hukumat aayegi to karenge. No, we are doing it now. And the Education Parliamentarian Caucus will be at our service of the people of Pakistan. So let's do it. I hope this was easy for you to understand what it is. We are talking about basics. But till we don't get the basics first, with a certain amount of emotional happiness and resilience and assertion, we will never go beyond where we are stuck right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Bela. Anna, may I pass straight on to you? Thank you. And could we get Anna's presentation up, please?
So, good morning, everyone. So I have to be fast. I'll try to make it. I cannot speak in English that fast, but so I have this presentation with a lot of information on the Sobral case, the famous Sobral case that people have been talking about since yesterday, the one that some of the fellows here could come and see with their own eyes in Brazil. So I'll go very fast through the slides, but the slides are available for you. So whenever you want to have access to them and have more information on the initiative. So can I have the presentation, please? Okay.
I think they're working on it.
Okay. So just for you to have a sense, Sobral is a municipality in the state of Ceará, in the northeast of Brazil. It's a municipality with 200,000 inhabitants, and it's not a very, it's a poor municipality. No, abundant resources, but a lot of political commitment and technical expertise that really made a difference. So just for you to have a sense, we are the Centro Lehman for Leadership and Equity in Education. We are a nonprofit organization in Brazil that had this opportunity to lead the fellowship program in the context of the South-South, which is this exchange program between educational leaders from global South countries. As Brazil is a very unequal country. We are the 9th largest economy, but we are in the 7th in the list of the most unequal countries in the globe. So a lot of disparities. It's not working now. So so the data is it's outdated actually. So you surpassed us. We are now the 6th largest population. Fertility is decreasing in Brazil. Now Pakistan is the 5th largest population. We have disparities mainly regarding socioeconomic backgrounds and racial as well. So the enslaved people that came from Africa to work in the Portuguese colony at that time, they are still struggling to have better opportunities in our country. So Ceará is the 5th poorest state in Brazil. And Sobral is one of the main municipalities, population, as I said. And what Sobral was able to do, in the year 2000, they realized that 49% of their students were illiterate, people until grade 5. And in 4 years, they managed to have 92% of the students having ensured that the foundational learning at the appropriate age. So now Sobral has 33,000 plus students, 2,000 teachers, 80 schools, and as you can see in the data, I think you can see it. It's the best in the ranking of our external standardized tests, educational results. It's the first one in grade 1 to 5, and it's the second, I think, grades 6 to 9. And everything started with those 4 musketeers, political leaders, mayors, secretaries of education, who decided that they could not cope with the tragedy that education was in their municipality. The fellows had a chance to chat with these musketeers. So everything started with this first mandate of Mayor Cid Gomes. He invested a lot in infrastructure. So he renovated the schools. He actually dismissed all these small schools that they had, multi-grade schools, and turned them into big schools with better facilities, free transport, free meals for every student. But still, in the end of his mandate, he realized that 49% of the students could not read and write. So it was not only a matter of having the right infrastructure. There was many other pieces that were missing. And then that's what I said yesterday. So when they realized that they had spent 4 years investing in education and the results were poor, they had 2 options, to hide the information or to make a real commitment to change their reality. And they actually chose the latter. And so the mayor went to all radio stations to say that they were not performing well, and that they really wanted to create this social pact with the population in order to change things. So they started investing in strong leadership. So the headmasters were politically appointed. Some of them were illiterate, headmasters of the schools. So they decided to really go for a meritocratic selection process. Even the mother-in-law of the Secretary of Education at that time ran for participating in the selection process and was not selected. Then people saw that that were really looking for the right people. And they give a lot of training, and they still give. So school supervisors go to their schools every week to support the management team at the school to overcome all the problems and really implement all the policies. And they even have, some money to decide on how to invest it in what is really important for the school. And of course, a lot of cohesion between the central government, the Municipal Department of Education, and the schools in order to really work collaboratively. Then they did a lot of very intentional and consistent pedagogical choices. First, to ensure school attendance. Sometimes, even the mayor would call parents to ask why their children were not in school. They did this massive campaign to ensure that students were in school, because if they are not there, they cannot learn. And of course, they chose a very focused curriculum in foundational literacy. They chose the materials that could fit to their context. They used mixed methods, everything that could really ensure that children were learning. And they were doing this in a very innovative way, not using something that was already there, but collecting interesting things from different models and building their own. Then they also started doing regular assessments. So every week they assess if children had learned or not. And if they haven't, then they have intervention activities to ensure that no one is left behind every week. And then at the municipal level, every semester they assess all students, and they have goals for each school, and they have prizes for the schools that achieve the goals. At the state level, every year they have assessments, and the schools that perform better, they are coaches for the ones that are not performing well. And at the national level, every 2 years, we also have the assessments, and then that's how Sobral stays is number one in the rank. They also invested a lot in professional development. They created a school just to train teachers, and teachers have 1 day per week to be trained. And they have substitute teachers that would take the lead in their classrooms so they can leave and be trained in the training school, and also inside the school with what they call the pedagogical coordinators. They also have all sorts of recognitions to value teachers' efforts. So they have financial incentives for those who achieve the goals of their classes, of their schools, and the municipality as a whole, and a lot of public recognition. People now from all over Brazil and even from Pakistan go to Sobral just to learn from their case, their educational case. So education became their most important asset. So if you get a cab, whoops, my time is over. So if you get a cab in Sobral, the cab driver would tell you everything about education. Parents, ordinary people, they all know about education, that they are very, very proud of their education system and of their teachers and headmasters. So this is this statement. The beauty of Sobral is that they do the obvious things very well. So there's no, silver bullet, not magic. It's just doing what they have to do. And I think just for you to know where Sobral is heading now, so they managed to replicate the Sobral model to all Ceará state, which is now the number one, also comparing to the states. They are also sharing the knowledge with many other municipalities around the country. And now they are really focusing on a more like contemporary curriculum, focus on the whole development of the child, and they are trying to expand the time that students stay in school from 4 hours now to 8 hours, so they will have more time to really concentrate in a more holistic approach to education. So I think that's pretty much what I had to share with you. And these are the steps, I think, that we try to organize, that Sobral actually pursue in order to get where they got. But I'm open for questions, even in the break, during the coffee breaks, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. I know you really skated through that, really appreciate it, and I take the point that English is not your easiest language, but you did a fantastic job. We've heard there, obviously from Bela, about the challenges here in Pakistan, and we've heard a fascinating story of success, really very rapid success in Brazil. I'm now going to turn to our three other panelists. I'm going to turn to you, Ms. Javeen, first, with a question, and they're going to explore different elements of how we tackle the challenges here in Pakistan. So, first of all, how do you think that the foundational learning crisis can be tackled, and what is the role of non-state actors as well as government in achieving this?
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to congratulate FCDO and British High Commission for arranging this event, which was much needed to bring all the stakeholders at a forum. So, a very good question, because this is the thing we are facing from past many years. So many has been done for the schooling of children, and the number of schools has been increased, the number of students has been increased, but still we are facing the learning crisis. So just to mitigate the learning crisis, I think first of all we should target the literacy in early years. As we always discussed, me and Bela, that first 8 years of life of a child are really very important, where you have to build the foundations of literacy skills and the emotional well-being and the growth, and the holistic child development is targeted in these years. So accelerated foundational literacy and development of the diagnostic regime at national and provincial level to address the issue of learning losses, which is very important. And secondly, we need to have the remediation systems, and one of which we are doing, the Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training in collaboration with SERP. We have implemented targeted instruction program in KP and ICT, and I would Darabi, who is sitting here, and Maliha as well. We are working hard to improve the learning outcomes and the learning losses during COVID. The remediation program is in place, and more than 4,000 teachers have been trained in teaching and in improving the learning outcomes at early grades in English, Urdu, and mathematics. So such kind of remediation programs should be in place. And we need to invest in teachers' training. Capacity building of teachers is very important. Incentivize the trainings, and the learning outcomes need to be gauged after the teachers' training as well, because not only the one component should be addressed, the holistic child development and the achievement at early grades need to be addressed. And as far as non-state actors, usually we say that they can only contribute in schooling. But I think that not only the schooling, but in every aspect of education, they should be included, whether it's gauging the progress on SDG 4 or developing and establishing monitoring and evaluation systems, the data collection, and the policy makers should make the decisions which are informed and based on data. So we need to present the data to them, and that can be only possible with the, having all the stakeholders at a place and overarching the efforts of all the stakeholders. So thank you.
Thank you very much, admirably to time as well. And it reflects very much what we were hearing in the first session, doesn't it, about the holistic approach to making societal change. You can't just do it with the politicians or just the policymakers. You need all of society, and particularly for children and education, you need their parents involved. Thank you.
One thing, Ministry of Federal Education has taken many little steps which would be definitely will be scaled up. One of which is targeting for individualized learning of the child is the teleschool mobile app that will be launched tomorrow or day after tomorrow. And in that app we have 6 channels for different age group of students, and we have the whole national curriculum in the digital form available in that app. So there are little steps. Leveraging technology would also increase the learning outcomes and improve the situation of the foundational learning.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to turn now to Mr. Riaz Kamlani, who, as I said, is heading up the Citizens Foundation. What has been the Citizens Foundation's experience in designing and implementing routines to improve the quality of learning outcomes in education? And how do you know if you're doing it right?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I think to your question, I was listening to Anna and talking about Sobral. A lot of people are acquainted with TCF's work, and I therefore would not spend a lot of time articulating that, but we run about 1,800 schools around the country. 1,400 of those are built and operated by TCF, while 400 have been adopted from the government. When you look at Sobral, it's a wonderful case study, but perhaps TCF for today is in a similar light. It's a longitudinal case study of a representative sample of low-income neighborhoods around the country. And therefore, I'll talk less about TCF today, but more about what works at TCF, what we believe can also work in the larger public sector. Few observations on that. Firstly, a sense of ground realities. When we talk about low-income neighborhoods, particularly primary schools, and that would be the focus of my conversation. There are many people who are very learned on that, but just to highlight 2 or 3 key elements of that. One, in a typical public school at a primary level, you will not have a full school. You will have 2 rooms. And that's a reality that we need to contend with. Number 2, we are insistent on teaching our children in a language the child doesn't understand. And that puts you off right at the start. Number 3, you have teachers whose own learning isn't to the right standard, whose own conceptual clarity is conspicuous by its absence, and as well as the fact that you don't have sufficient teachers. Most of the government schools, if you look at the average number of teachers, hover around 2.5 to 3.5 in the public sector. So that's the set of ground realities that we need to operate in. And when we at TCF look at foundational learning, we essentially look at 3 elements: how we define it, how we design it, and how we deliver it. And I'll talk about each one by one. So define, design, deliver. Let's start with how do we define it. Literacy and numeracy is important, absolutely, and that's the first of the 3 elements that we'll focus on, and Bela has spoken about it, so I won't add much more. That's absolutely essential. The second thing, however, is learning how to learn. It's important in those foundation years for a child to learn how to learn, to have his or her own voice, to explore that voice, to be able to ask questions, to be able to navigate through content by himself or herself. That, to me, or to us, is foundational learning that needs to be built in right at the beginning. The third, which is something that perhaps isn't mentioned as often as it ought to, is joy. Learning should be a joyful process. Kids love to enjoy themselves. I think adults do as well, but we miss out joy. So literacy and numeracy, in terms of definition, learning how to learn and experiencing joy. When I talk of definition, I mean these 3 things. Let's look at design. And here I'll talk with some illustrations so that, given the ground realities, we have some kind of semblance of connection between the 2. I'll talk of 3 things here. When it comes to design, firstly on language, that insistence on teaching English is conspicuous by absence at TCF. There is a whole approach that we are currently in the process of implementing. We've been Urdu medium right since our inception. Right now we are working on a frame where mother tongue-based multilingual education can actually be put on ground. And how do those language transitions work? That is something that's a piece of work that the country deserves, not just Sindh, not just a particular province or a particular area. That's something that the whole country deserves when it comes to language. The second thing when it comes to design is remediation learning. We've done work at TCF where we've essentially said that differentiated learning will be a requirement across our schools. How do we put together the program that we've done? We call it Agaz, a beginning. How do we put a 3-graded frame of curriculum right at the beginning of an academic year so that a child's remedial requirements are understood at the front end and catered for? That's a requirement across public schools with a remediation program that hits at the core of the issue rather than the peripherals. So that's the second thing. Thirdly, when it comes to joy, in the early years, how do we envisage a program that is thematic, that is play-based, that is centered around storytelling, which are deeply contextualized in our society? So across all our schools, we now have a thematic, play-based, story-based frame which operates across Pakistan in the low-cost settings that we are operating in. So those are the elements that I'll touch on when it comes to design. Lastly, when it comes to delivery, again, multifaceted equation that you talk about here, but let's just focus on one element, which is teaching. Teaching in class, the many teachers here, lesson planning continues to be the bane of many teachers' lives because you need to write pages upon pages. The young women, and I say young women because it's predominantly young women who teach in our primary schools, do not have the capacity to do it. How do you think about detailed lessons plans which are built to the level of exactly what needs to happen in classroom so that she only has to write a one-line lesson plan and actually enjoy the process of teaching? Learn from it, grow from it, and in the further years, in the 4th, 5th year, being able to write lesson plans herself. How do you make things easy for her? That's what we do across all subject grades. So development of teacher guides. Secondly, when you have only 2-room schools, there are teachers here. Imagine teaching a classroom where you have 11 kids of grade 3 and 14 kids of grade 4. Try that. Ain't easy. There is a particular way of how that is to be done, and there are many things, there are many ways around the world that has been done. How do we bring good multi-grade teaching practices into our classrooms? Something that we've done with the support of FCDO as well. Last, and I will end here, is envisaging education not just in terms of outcomes, but as a process. I find often in conferences we talk about outcomes, which is great, but education is a process first and foremost. How do you manage and monitor? Right down to classroom observations, to copy checking, to co-curricular activities. How do you ensure that things actually happen? And how do you not do that from simply a perspective of evaluation, but from a perspective of support and development? And in that process, school leadership sits at the center. How do you have great head teachers at schools where your utopia is you'll go once a year, give her a pat on the back, and come back? Because that's all that's needed. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much indeed. I think what came across very clearly there is how important it is to put the child at the heart of this. If we're thinking about how do they learn how to learn, not how do we impose knowledge upon them, and that sense of joy and playfulness and wanting to learn how to read their own stories, if we can get that intrinsic motivation within the children, that is a major step in the right direction. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to Mr. Salman Naveed. What I'd like to hear from you, if possible, is what are the achievements in foundational literacy and numeracy that we've seen over the previous decade? What have we learnt? What have we achieved? And what needs to change going forward? That's not helpful.
Thank you. I'll try and be as brief as possible. So, keeping in mind the Decade of Learning, the event, which is also a celebration of the work that FCDO and DFID previously have done, is primarily in Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa provinces under the education sector reforms programs, and the political will that they were able to garner and use for the benefit of our children, our communities, and parents and teachers. Some of the great things that have happened, especially when it comes to foundational literacy or learning in early years, is, and a number of people may not know this, but especially in Punjab, the Punjab Examination Commission was established as part of the reform program that happened there. 5th and 8th grade centralized exams were set up, and the data provided the school education department the leverage and the numbers on what focus was needed, which was later transitioned into all grades, all subjects since 2019. The second important element was a literacy and numeracy drive, again an initiative that, that was started under the reform program, where grade 3 students were tested against student learning outcomes in English, Urdu, and math, which, and they had 300,000 data points every month. So there was a significant sample of what was happening in schools, in classrooms across Punjab every month. So you could help identify which schools needed more help and which schools didn't. In the foundational literacy domain, that in itself, the marriage of technology in education management and how teachers were informed of diagnostics right there and then, so they could put any remediation strategies in place. That in itself was a game changer. It has been a game changer, especially in Punjab, something that Dr. Andrabi mentioned yesterday, and the number of first generation girls who've transitioned from grade 12 and above, and the comparison with their mothers who were largely illiterate, or 3/4 of them almost were. Just the fact that you're catching any behavioral problems, challenges in early years through a very, very strong diagnostic system in itself is a good direction to take. I think that has been established, especially in the largest province of the country. The challenges going forward, unfortunately, are still significant. One, right now, Islamabad is the only district. We have 160 districts in Pakistan, ranging between a population of 500,000 to a few million people. Islamabad is the only district in Pakistan which has a position of a chief learning officer, or in Islamabad's case, it's called Director Academics. We have colleagues from the districts here as well who are managing the processes. The structure of education service delivery, unlike TCF, where academics is front and center of how it's delivered, the state structures right now are largely administrative. You have district education officers, you have people operating at the tehsils or the talukas or the towns, and then you have people operating at in some cases, at the union council level, not in all provinces. But the only district to have a chief learning officer, the only of the 159 districts, everyone else looks at teachers' transfers and postings, looks at construction or rehabilitation projects, pays attention to the WhatsApp voice notes that they get from secretaries, commissioners, deputy commissioners, and basically just implement notifications that come in from a provincial headquarter. Unless and until there is a focus, and Sobral's example is perfect. In a municipality of 200,000, which in Pakistan's equivalence would be 5 to 6 union councils at most, there was a concerted effort. Pakistan's, one of the challenges that we are still facing right now is largely political than it is education, because we do not believe in local government and the fact that local government can deliver. We do not have empowered district education officers. We do not have empowered tehsil or town education officers. We do not have empowered head teachers. It's okay for us to spend anything upwards of 25 million to 60 million a year on a school staff salaries, but it's impossible for us to imagine that if we give that school ₹1 million, that they would spend it wisely. So the non-salary budget, or a budget that would help operationalize learning inside a school, is largely missing. And that decision right now is being taken at the secretariat level for systems of 12,000 schools in Balochistan, or 12,500 schools in Balochistan, to almost 50,000 or a little over 50,000 in Punjab. And those decisions are being taken not at the district level, not at the union council level, not at the school level, but at a level that is so far removed that it is impossible for any head teacher or any teacher to actually focus on any assisted devices or assistance they can seek from community to help impact learning inside classrooms. If a teacher or a head teacher wants to hire temporary teachers right now, unless and until there is a scheme by the provincial education department, it is impossible. moving on from the district to the provinces, Sindh is the only province right now with a chief curriculum advisor or a person who is a bridge between administration and learning. The other provinces do not have a single position that monitors or has an impact on learning itself. Unless and until we, especially the development partners, unless and until there are ways in which FCDO moving forward helps influence the local governance of education, we will keep trying to resolve the issue from a provincial level or at the federal level, which we've seen working at the political level because routines were established, especially in Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. But we've seen those routines being disintegrating because there was no community ownership also. So I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We have 10 minutes left, but what was really interesting there, I think, was successes delivered, also the huge scale of the challenge. I mean, in comparison with Sobral, but that's not the point. That's a sort of microcosm of success that we can draw on, but also the importance of bringing money and decision-making and autonomy down to the really local level. I think that's a great challenge. So we have 10 minutes. I'm going to take one round of questions from the floor, if there are questions, and then I will see what answers we get, and then I'll come back to Anna and Bela in reverse order, in other words, in that order, just for some concluding thoughts based on what they've heard. Do we have any questions? Whoa, the hands are going up. Lovely. Okay, I'm always first come, first served. The gentleman there in the grey suit behind the white flowers with the beard waving at me, thank you. Oh, put your hands back up because I've lost you now. There was a... Okay, I'm going to go over to the lady over there in the pink, grey outfit, and then I'm going to go to the lady behind. Can you just wave your hand at me there? Yes, the lady there, and then the gentleman behind the lady in green to the left. And then we'll see how we do. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Since we have a government official in the panel representing Federal Directorate of Education, or Ministry of Federal Education, my question is, you have over 400 educational institutions. In how many institutions you are now running early childhood education centers? And maybe you know, the first act of the Parliament, which was passed under Article 25A, was the right to free and compulsory education in Islamabad Capital Territory. And maybe you have read it or not, I don't know. I have been trying for the last 3 years that Ministry or the Federal Directorate of Education should own that act and upload it on its website. 10 years have passed, but Ministry of FD has not been able to pass or notify rules of business. That's number one. Number two, which is provided in the
really
Act, is the Advisory Council to monitor the implementation of Article 25A. That has not been formed. So why Federal Directorate of Education is avoiding to upload that Act, which is very important, and secondly, how many EC centers are you running?
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Bean. That's a very good piece of advice. Let's take all the questions first. Do we have a microphone over there yet?
Hi, so this is Huma. My question is to Anne. And I want to know, thank you so much for sharing this story about Sobral. So I would probably ask you to share a little bit more about, in terms of the success in foundational learning that you've had, how is it that you guys managed the issue of sort of getting rid of teachers who weren't really performing well in the system? I understand the support system that was provided that you've shared in the presentation, but would like you to go through the journey that you guys went through for teacher revolution and ensuring that you have teachers in place in the system who were helping the system and helping children learn.
Thank you very much. Can we get a microphone over to the lady there? Just put your hand right up in the air. Yep, that lady there, please. And if we've got that gentleman, we'll have that question first, behind the lady in green.
Thank you so much. My question is to Anna, that I just want to ask that in your presentation you have discussed about the achievement learning skills for the teachers. So can I just want to know that what are the skills to measure these achievement learning skills? And second question is that what is the job security for the teachers? Because if the teachers want to leave their job for another good opportunity, so how would you manage these things, and what is the backup plan after their leaving? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And finally, sir.
Just one question is all about leadership qualities in the teachers. This is Raja Muzammil, and I'm presenting here Teach for Pakistan and presenting myself as education leader in the state schools of Islamabad to eradicate the educational inequity. So I have a question that whenever we see all the teachers that have been hired by the government, and they have a lot of responsibility like going to the census, extra duties like elections, and they have a lot of trainings for that. So my question is, why don't we focus on their leadership abilities to present and to teach and learn the process of learning and how to deliver all the things to the students to overcome the learning gaps and to understand the cultural ambiguities they have, including you can say that the diversity of languages as well as other aspects. So why don't we focus on the training of these teachers? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to let you choose which bits of these questions you answer, okay? So I'm going to go to Mr. Bean, I'm going to come back here, and then move along the panel in the interests of time. Thank you.
So the question regarding Article 25A, the constitutional right of every child to get free and compulsory education from grade 1 to 10. So the rules have been framed, and I'm not sure that they are available on a website, but the bylaws regarding the school management committees, they are available on the website of Federal Directorate of Education. And your question regarding the ECCE centers, 1 year pre-primary education, as our policy states, that is compulsory education policy. So we have in 190 institutions, we have prep class or 1 year pre-primary class. Your question regarding exactly the ECCE, or if it is regarding the 3 years pre-primary education, for that I would say that we are in the planning phase, and the ministry is looking forward to increase the number of years for pre-primary education in the policy as well. But we have almost in 20% of our institutions, primary education institutions, we have this ECCE setup, but for 2 years pre-primary education. It's not been increased to 3 years, but it's in like phase of development, and we are planning and to have more ECCE centers in our institutions. And presently we have taken an initiative, you may have seen that, the mobile ECCE classroom, we have launched it a week back, and these are established in a school bus which will go to the slum areas and to cater the needs of the children who don't have the access to school or even the pre-primary education. So the step has been taken, and in its pilot phase we have launched 2 buses which will go to the 8 areas, and almost 200 students they will be catered. But we will scale it up after like having the impact study. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to come to Mr. Naveed next.
Thank you. I'll take the question on leadership. So I think it's a given. Yes, absolutely. Pakistani teachers, private sector or public sector, need to be trained in a way that they're able to deliver the expectations that we have, especially the people in this room or parents have, on what their children should learn in schools. The second part of which was a comment is on extra duties that teachers have. For example, the current census. Right now, the teaching workforce in the state sector across Pakistan is the largest employer largest employer, period. We have over 850,000 government school teachers across all provinces and territories. So right now, it's the easiest place to go and for the state to undertake any significant exercise. The challenge or the problem is that we don't undertake these exercises based on when the teachers are available, i.e. during the summer vacation or in certain areas during the 3-month winter vacation. We do it at a time that's convenient for us. So that's the unfortunate bit, but I don't think anyone here was part of that decision making, so there's nothing that we could do. But thank you.
Fair enough, not our fault. Can we pass on to the Citizens Foundation? I thought we might come to her afterwards and then she can wrap up her answers with the concluding comments. Do you mind? Okay. No problem at all. That's very kind of you. We'll pass on to Anna.
So I'm sorry, I think I don't really get your questions. I mean, I didn't understand what you were asking. So I'll start with the first question on how to engage the teachers and train them. Of course, in the beginning, there was a lot of resistance. Teachers were used to do things their own way, and then all of a sudden, they had to change the way they were teaching, and they were like very clear goals that they had to pursue and achieve. So the key component of this was the headmasters, right? The training, selection and training of the headmasters in the very beginning of the revolution, it took like 6 months. And it was mainly focused on changing headmasters' behavior, in working on their soft skills, so they could have they could be inspiring, they could be empathetic, they could really focus on the learning of the students, and of course they could really motivate the teachers and train them on the job. So this relationship between the headmasters and the teacher is crucial in Sobral. Headmasters are real leaders and that gain and have a lot of trust among their team. Of course, the training school, the teacher school, plays also a very important role, because through the assessments, they learn what they understand what the students are not learning, which means what the teachers are not teaching well. So they focus their training in solving these problems. It's very focused on really ensuring that students are going to learn. But of course, there was also this sense of, there was this very clear goal that the mayor had set, which was 100% of the students learning how to read and write by grade 2. And everybody was working towards this direction. So there's this organization called STEER that talks about intrinsic motivation, and they say that intrinsic motivation has to do with purpose, the sense of purpose, mastery, and autonomy. That's what they try to develop in the teachers. They, clear goals, they knew what they had to do, they were trained to master what they had to do, and they gain autonomy to use different methods and materials in order to really get what they had to get. In terms of...
Back up if the teachers leave.
I think I covered everything.
Yeah, I think
yes.
so. That's great. Thank you so much. Really interesting. Bela, I'm going to pass the mic to you to finish off the session. If I can just say, we heard about the data, we've got the information, we've heard about success stories, how that was delivered in Sobral, we've heard a lot about an individual methodology that is delivering success in the Citizens Foundation, and I think we've heard about real passion and commitment and a pragmatism going forward. Bela, what's your sense of where we go from here?
So what we've heard just now, I mean, from the context or the understanding on foundational learning, there are already initiatives in the country where the understanding perhaps is getting deeper. What is really of concern is while the government is welcoming, and I think Pakistan has a great record on partnerships, welcoming partners. Riaz's 400 TCF schools are from the government that they are managing. Now, all this is very well, but is there a sense of coherence, that sense of purpose, and that sense of mastery within the system level, so that, and that vision that Riaz shared, that, you know, ensuring that schools not just function well, and as Anna said, doing what is common sense and doing it well, but from the point of view of the child, so that is the child happy to learn? As Riaz said, is there holistic learning taking place? Are teachers well supported over there? Are they learning in a language that they understand well? And are the routines, whether it is to deliver learning, foundational learning well, and to get feedback, is that happening? Because what Salman said, that there is big data, there is L&D, I mean, big data points that the government is getting, but are the loops being closed from that data to action? And if there is no autonomy, I mean, you can't trust a head teacher like they trust in Sobral. My God, it was phenomenal to get a head teacher telling the story so powerfully. If you people had seen there, I mean, it was, she was in charge, or he was in charge of the amount of pot of money that came to the school, the decision they were making democratically with the parents' engagement and the teachers' engagement and the children at the center of it all. If we do not trust our DOs and our head teachers, and everything remains in a devolved setup to the provinces, but still centralized to the provinces, then we will not have foundational learning closest to the child. That whole notion of subsidiarity, where decision taking place, decision making takes place closest to the child, and you have full trust in empowered, trained, and trustworthy teachers and head teachers and the community to know what they're doing best, we will still not have foundational learning. So we are there, maybe the glass is half full. I'm an optimist. I don't want to say half empty. I'm sure many over here will say, rubbish, Bela is saying it is half empty. I think it's half full. For the next decade, how do we make sure it is full so that every child really is learning in Pakistan and is truly happy? We deserve happiness in this country.
Thank you, Bela. We're not children, although we do have some children in the room. We all need optimism, we need encouragement, so thank you for ending on that very positive note, and thank you to all of you for being so concise. I really appreciate it, and I'm sorry I've been pushing you. We will move on to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such an inspiring and thoughtful discussion on foundational learning. I'm so sorry that we have such a packed back-to-back agenda, but you know, we also had so many different stories to share. And with that those concluding remarks from Bela, I will move us on to two parallel sessions that we are having now. The one in this room, we will look at teachers and school leadership and some of the questions that we've just been talking about in this session. So, and this is a session where some of the school leaders or teachers, and their students will come and share their transformative journeys of teaching in very challenging classrooms and schools, and then overcoming those challenges. And then in the next room adjacent to this room, we have another very interesting session on equity and inclusion, where we will be talking about, what are the issues of inclusion of children with disabilities, what challenges do children from minorities face, and girls. So can I please request all the participants, depending on which theme you're interested in. As I said, the teachers and school leadership session will be in this room, and the session on equity and inclusion is in the room next door. Can I please request you to
So if you would like to join the equity and inclusion session, could you move next door, because the panelists are on the stage waiting to talk to you. If you're wanting to hear from the children and the teachers from Teach for Pakistan, please stay here. And then we can all get to lunch. Decision time, folks. I know the conversations are really important, but in everybody's interests, could we divide up between the rooms? Thank you so much.
We are running a little bit behind schedule, so we're going to try and fit a lot in, and we have a huge topic for us. Equity and inclusion has so many different dynamics.
Right. Thank you so much. Can I please have everyone's attention? For this next session, I want to invite Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Khadija is the CEO and founder of Teach for Pakistan, which nurtures leadership and to end educational inequity. Teach for Pakistan provides inspired university graduates the opportunity and support to teach for 2 years in low-income communities through a structured fellowship program, and develops the leadership skills and contextual understandings to effect long-term system-wide reform for educational equity. I'll hand over to you, Khadija, because we have your Teach for Pakistan fellows and students, which I'm sure you will introduce to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very
very much. Thank you very much, Saima. Assalamu alaikum. ये mic की placement थोड़ी सी awkward है. The way to the back of the hall. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum ji, good afternoon. Welcome to this session. It's called, as you can see on the screen behind us, Unlocking the Classroom Black Box. Teachers and students reflect on the experience of co-creating transformative learning. Decade of Learning celebrate कर रहे हैं, Decade of Learning की बात कर रहे हैं. Thank you, Saima. And I think हम में से बहुत सारे लोग जो कि डेटा से familiar हैं, हम जानते हैं जो डेटा हम देख रहे हैं पाकिस्तान के learning outcomes के ऊपर कई सालों से, उसको तो हम जानते हैं. बट आई थिंक हम में से अक्सर जो क्लासरूम्स में डे टू डे वक्त नहीं गुजारते, एक सवाल अपने आप से ज़रूर पूछते हैं कि क्लासरूम के अंदर क्या हो रहा है. द क्लासरूम इन मैनी टाइम्स फील्स लाइक अ लिटिल बिट ऑफ अ ब्लैक बॉक्स. व्हेन थिंग्स गो रॉन्ग एंड लर्निंग आउटकम्स डू नॉट इम्प्रूव और स्टे पुअर, वी वंडर व्हाट इज हैपनिंग. एंड इन दोज वेरी वेरी स्पेशल क्लासरूम्स that really go on a journey of learning, that take all the students in that classroom on that journey of learning, we often wonder what is this magic that is happening inside the classroom. And so I'm so happy to be here today and be talking to you from Teach for Pakistan's platform and sharing with you what we see in our classrooms and be talking to you through the lens of our teachers and students. सबसे ज़्यादा इस classrooms को बहुत अच्छी तरह कौन जानता है, कौन समझता है, वो टीचर्स और स्टूडेंट्स जो रोज़ाना इन क्लासरूम्स को एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं. एंड सो थैंक यू वेरी मच टू आवर esteemed पैनलिस्ट फॉर बीइंग हियर टुडे. वक्त निकाल के आए आप, स्कूल के टाइम के अंदर आए आप हमसे बात करने के लिए. सो वेरी वेरी ग्रेटफुल फॉर दैट. मैं वेलकम करना चाहूँगी सबसे पहले अपने स्टूडेंट पैनलिस्ट को जिन्होंने आज हमें ज्वाइन किया है. तैमूर खान जो 11 साल के हैं, क्लास 7 में पढ़ते हैं, इस्लामाबाद मॉडल स्कूल फॉर बॉयज़ कुरी से हमें ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं. अस्सलाम वालेकुम तैमूर, क्या हाल है?
अस्सलामुअलैकुम, मैं बहुत खुश हूँ यहाँ आकर और आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया कि आपने हमें यहाँ बुलाया और ये अपॉर्चुनिटी दी.
थैंक यू वेरी मच तैमूर. और तैमूर के साथ बैठी हैं हमारी दूसरी स्टूडेंट फ़ायज़ा. फ़ायज़ा अस्सलाम वालेकुम. आप 11 साल की हैं, क्लास 6 में पढ़ती हैं, इस्लामाबाद मॉडल स्कूल फॉर गर्ल्स संजानी से हमें ज्वाइन कर रही हैं. क्या हाल है?
I am fine. I am so happy, so excited to see you all.
That's wonderful. थैंक यू वेरी मच फ़ायज़ा. और फ़ायज़ा के साथ बैठी हैं फ़ायज़ा की टीचर मारिया. Maria Mohiddin is currently working on the development and partnerships team at Teach for Pakistan. She was a Teach for Pakistan fellow who completed her 2-year teaching experience in Sangjani last year. Maria, how are you doing? Yes, I certainly don't need 2 mics.
Very well. Thank you, everybody, for being here and very excited to be here.
Thank you very much, Maria. And Maria was teaching to Faiza and her classmates English and social studies. And then we'll go all the way back to the end. Mohammad Ali हमें join कर रहे हैं. Mohammad Ali is one of Taimur's teachers who teaches English and history at IMSB Kuri. He is also a first-year Teach for Pakistan fellow. Welcome to the panel, Ali.
Thank you so much. It's always, I feel really excited to be with my students sitting on the panel. So it's a moment of pride for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali. अच्छा, सबसे पहले मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाहूँगी मारिया और अली, why and how did you decide to teach?
Thank you, Khadija. I think, before joining the fellowship, I was an undergraduate at LUMS. वहाँ पे मैं LUMS के business school में गई थी. And as a young person, I always wanted to do something quote unquote impactful, but I was always looking for a place where I would fit. As a business student, I always enjoyed what I was studying because it was challenging, and as an individual, I thrive when there are challenges. But I feel like I never felt inspired by that line of work, so I never could really see myself pursuing that in the long term. जब पहला टीच फॉर पाकिस्तान का इन्फॉर्मेशन सेशन हुआ, मैंने एक वीडियो देखी जिसके अंदर I saw a lot of joy, I saw a lot of eagerness to learn, and the most unique thing I saw was the relationship between the student and their teacher, which was one of love and friendship, and I could see that these students, enjoyed the pursuit of learning, which was something very novel for me despite having studied in a private school all my life. And that's for the first time in my life, I saw myself fit there in a community just like that, with students just like those, trying to do a little bit of what I can. So that's why I decided to teach and applied for the fellowship.
Thank you so much, Maria. And Ali, how did you come into teaching?
So, like, I teach English and history to grade 6 and 7 at IMSB Kuri. So, I'm basically from Chitral, so my primary education has always been like in Chitral. Uske baad, I came to Islamabad. I studied in a boarding school on full scholarship. And then I went to Lahore to study from LUMS, which is one of the best universities in the country. Jahan se maine economics and political science padha. I also did a minor in education. और लम्स के अंदर भी I was getting 100% scholarship and I was studying on 100% financial aid. और मैं अक्सर सोचता था कि there would be thousands of other students like me who are not able to continue their education or who are not able to pursue their higher education because of this lack of financial support or because of this lack of information related to scholarship opportunities. और फिर लम्स के अंदर ही मैंने different courses पढ़े from social sciences, from business school, from the education school, and there are two courses that really stood out for me. एक था social injustice in education, and the other was critical debates in education in Pakistan. और इन दो courses की वजह से मैंने ये इरादा कर लिया था कि right after the graduation I would be making a career in a development sector, especially in education. क्योंकि I have an edge and I have always been very privileged and honored that I studied in good schools, in good university, that also on scholarship. And I wanted a platform where I could spread that awareness regarding scholarship opportunities, regarding career counseling, and Teach for Pakistan was the best opportunity for me. And here at Teach for Pakistan, what I do, I have this direct interaction with students from an under-resourced community, jahan like I feel some sort of relation of my own background and with them. और फिर उनके साथ मैं सारा वो काम करता हूँ career counseling से लेके information से लेके ताकि they would also achieve the same thing which I have achieved at this point in time. And this was primarily the motivation behind joining Teach for Pakistan.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Ali and Maria. I think that's what we would want to hear from any teacher who teaches any one of our students, of any one of our children, right? You want to hear a teacher be really inspired about the work that they're doing. So thank you for sharing that. Maria, I want to come back to you and I want to ask, badi inspiration ke saath aapne kaam shuru kiya, but when you started to work with your students, what did you find? What was the state of learning in your classroom? And what was your hypothesis कि ये state ऐसी क्यों है?
Thank you, Rita. My bad. So when I joined, so for some context, I started my fellowship in November 2020, and this was the second wave of COVID-19. So when I joined, students were, there was staggered attendance, and they were attending school on alternate days, and everybody was masked, and so was I. And what I saw in that classroom was, again, these students who were a bit shy, who was trying to identify, ये कौन teacher है, कहाँ से आए हैं, इनकी शक्ल कैसी दिखती है, mask कब अपना उतारेंगी. I saw students who and then when I tried to make conversation with them, they would shy away from that. Would disappear, someone would run away. But I also saw that these were students who were walking miles every day to come to school. But when I would ask them, आप स्कूल क्यों आते हैं? आपके लिए स्कूल आना ज़रूरी क्यों है? तो जवाब अक्सर ये होता था क्योंकि स्कूल तो सब जाते हैं. अम्मी ने कहा है स्कूल जाना है, या फिर दोस्तों से मिलने में मज़ा आता है. So for them, I did not see a lot of engagement with learning. What I saw was, yes, I want to come to school and I know this is a noble pursuit, but I don't really know why I'm in school. जब मैं उनसे कहती थी कि चलो आज हम ये पढ़ेंगे, ये सीखेंगे, आप मुझे बताएं आपका इसके बारे में क्या ख्याल है, तो वो मुझे कहते थे टीचर वो तो आप बताएंगी, जवाब आप बताएंगी, आप बोर्ड पे लिखेंगी तो हम उसको उतारेंगे. When I was trying to diagnose their learning levels, I saw that these students were on average 3 grades behind their grade level, which meant that जो बच्चा class 4 में बैठा है उसकी learning ability class 1 की है और वो 2-3 letter words identify नहीं कर पा रहा in English, which is the medium of instruction. लेकिन उससे एग्ज़ाम रिक्वायर करता है कि वो पूरी कहानियाँ लिखे, इसलिए उसको ये समझ आता है कि अगर मैंने पढ़ाई करनी है तो वो सिर्फ मेरे लिए रोट लर्निंग या रट्टा लगाना है क्योंकि ये लैंग्वेज मेरे लिए फॉरेन है, मैं इसको नहीं पहचानती. So, and that's when I knew that there's, something needs to change here. These students have a lot of, I saw a lot of untapped potential. I saw a lot of eagerness. I just saw a classroom, a school culture that maybe could not bring out that potential, and that's when that's when I knew that this is what I'll be doing for the next 2 years here.
And Ali, was your experience somewhat similar to Maria's? या मुख्तलिफ था? आपके लिए कैसा रहा?
Yeah, it was a bit similar, but at the same time, somewhat of different. So जो एक normal practice है, like it's my first year, so we spent around 6 weeks in the Teach for Pakistan Training Institute before going to the school community. And it was 9 September 2022 when we first stepped inside that school, and we were cordially welcomed by our new colleagues and also the principal, of course. Uske baad, we went to the classroom, I along with my co-fellow, we went to the classroom just to have some introduction with them. It was a class of 58 students, and we would hardly walk inside the classroom, fully packed. And we could see some students were very excited, very happy to see us because we were completely new to them. And at the same time, there were some students quite scared, quite hesitant, as it normally happens, right, to see new people. और वो सहमे हुए थे, डरे हुए थे. और कुछ students थे who were hyperactive. They used to make, paper balls and throw at each other and used to make noise in the classroom. So here, after spending a minute or more, we managed the classroom and then we started introduction with them. और फिर मैंने उनको अपने लैपटॉप के ऊपर I showed different pictures of different professions. I showed them a doctor, an engineer, a musician, a soldier, a farmer, and a teacher. और फिर मैंने उनसे पूछा कि what you want to be out of these professions. And can you imagine, 80% of my students wanted to become soldiers. And 2 students wanted to become doctors, 2 or 3 wanted to become engineers, and the rest wanted to become like teachers or any other profession or musician. Per se. Then I reframed the question. I said, okay, so 80% of our students want to become military officers. और फिर एक student खड़ा हुआ कहता है, no sir, we don't want to become military officers, we want to become soldiers working under those military officers. And it was very shocking for me because they had a very low expectation. और उन्होंने मुझे ये भी कहा कि हमारे जितने भी cousins हैं और relatives हैं who studied from government school, they become soldiers in the end or join Pakistan Army, and we don't have more scope or more opportunities to upgrade our profession later from the education. मेरे ज़हन में ये click किया कि I have to work on students' expectations or student learning and also of course on their perception. उसके बाद I took a scaffolded test. So scaffolded test, like for the audience, I would just explain it, how it is designed. We have different questions from different grade levels, from grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, and also from grade 6 and 7, where we actually understand at what level that student is currently lying in comparison to their actual grade and also the grade where they are currently existing. And it was surprising for me that my students who were sitting at grade 7 were 3 grade levels behind their actual grades. So they were at grade 4, but they were sitting in grade 7. And I had this task to do, that I will have to work on bridging this education gap and at the same time working on students' behavior, which was some bit of disruptive, and also working on, giving them better, higher expectations and making the perception quite optimistic and positive for them. So I left the classroom with so many questions and of course in so much in my mind to do for these students.
Yeah. And Ali, I want to come back to understand, that's massive, right? Both the academic gap जो आप दोनों ने describe किया, it's massive, and I want to come back to understanding what you decided to do with that once you had an understanding of what was happening in the classroom when you entered. But before we do that, I want to go back to our students and ask them, जब आप पहली दफ़ा अपने टीचर से मिले, आपके केस में तैमूर, अली और सर अंस आए आपको पढ़ाने के लिए, कैसा लगा? How was that experience for you?
हम सब बच्चे बहुत खुश थे जब हमारे टीचर पहली दफ़ा हम लोगों के स्कूल में आए थे, और हमें ये उम्मीद थी कि वो बहुत ज़्यादा अच्छे होंगे, और वाकई वो बहुत ज़्यादा अच्छे थे, क्योंकि पहला काम तो उन्होंने ये किया कि वो स्टिक्स जिनसे बच्चों को पनिशमेंट किया जाता था उनको तोड़ दिया, और हमें ये होप दिलाई कि हम बगैर पनिशमेंट के भी अपनी लर्निंग को जारी रख सकते हैं. दूसरी चीज़ ये कि उन्होंने हमें अपने लैपटॉप पे, जैसा कि हमारे सर अली ने बताया, हमें डिफरेंट प्रोफेशंस की पिक्चर्स बताई और हमसे हमारे गोल के बारे में पूछा। तो हमने अपना अपना गोल अपने सर्स को बता दिया। तो उन्होंने हमें ये समझाया कि आपको ज़िंदगी में अपने गोल्स और ड्रीम को पूरा करने के लिए सख्त मेहनत की ज़रूरत है।
थैंक यू वेरी मच तैमूर। और अभी मैं आपसे पूछूंगी वापस आके कि गोल था क्या आपका? फायजा, आपके लिए कैसा एक्सपीरियंस रहा? अजीब सा एक्सपीरियंस था पहली दफ़ा ये टीचर्स आए आपके स्कूल में?
जब पहली दफ़ा मैम मारिया और मैम सईदा हमारे स्कूल में आए, क्लास में आए, तो सारे बच्चे कंफ्यूज भी थे और खुश भी थे। खुश इसलिए कि उनको नई टीचर्स मिली हैं, और कंफ्यूज इसलिए कि पता नहीं है टीचर्स हमें किस तरह पढ़ाएंगी, प्यार से, गुस्से से। दे हैव नो आइडिया कि ये टीचर्स हमें किस तरह पढ़ाएंगी। लेकिन जब इन्होंने हमें पढ़ाना शुरू किया, इतने फ्रेंडली माहौल में इन्होंने हमें पढ़ाया, और ऐसे जैसे एक इंसान अपनी फ्रेंड को गाइड कर रहा होता है, ऐसे इन्होंने हमें पढ़ाया, जो कि हमारे लिए एजाज़ की बात थी।
अच्छा, एक बात मैं वैसे आपको बता सकती हूँ कि आपके टीचर्स जब पहली दफ़ा स्कूल में एंटर करते हैं तो बच्चे नर्वस होते हैं, मगर टीचर्स उससे कहीं ज़्यादा नर्वस होते हैं। ये सीक्रेट है, ये आपको जाननी चाहिए, राइट? पहली दफ़ा जो भी टीचर एंटर करता है क्लासरूम में थरथरा रहा होता है। सो I want to go back to the question where we left it off, कि आपने ये देखा क्लासरूम के अंदर ये है लर्निंग का लेवल, एंड ये है इस वक्त बच्चे अपने बारे में कैसे सोच रहे हैं। अली, आपसे पहले पूछना चाहूँगी, आपके पहले फर्स्ट स्टेप्स क्या थे?
अच्छा, so it's a good question. So like when I reflected back to the experience I saw in the classroom, and also based on the training I received from the institute. सबसे पहले मैंने ये सोचा कि I must have a vision for these students, और उस विजन की बेस पे I would do something ताकि जो हम एकेडमिक अचीवमेंट हैं या जो सोशल इमोशनल लर्निंग है उस पे हम फोकस कर सकते हैं। तो आई स्टार्टेड, तो मैंने अपने इस विजन को आई गेव इट लाइक देयर आर टू एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ दैट विजन फॉर माय स्टूडेंट्स। वन वाज एकेडमिक ऑफ कोर्स, जिसमें मैंने ये सोचा, मैंने ये देखा कि एटलीस्ट 80% ऑफ माय स्टूडेंट्स मस्ट अचीव व्हाट दे आर लर्निंग इन द क्लासरूम in that lecture and also at the end of the year. Usme I thought that they must excel in English literacy, writing, reading, speaking, because English is not only communication, but all other subjects are somehow I should not say somehow, all other subjects are directly related to English, because geography, science and other subjects, if you are good in English, you will be performing better in those subjects as well.
And आपके स्कूल के अंदर मीडियम ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शन और मीडियम ऑफ असेसमेंट दोनों इंग्लिश ही हैं,
English of course, yeah. और उसके अलावा फिर मैंने सोशल इमोशनल लर्निंग के ऊपर भी काम करने सोचा था, जिसमें I thought these kids must have awareness about social and political situation around them, क्योंकि they must know what are their responsibilities and they must also know what are their rights apart from or along with those responsibilities. जिसमें I created a vision for I created a chain for my students, which was the future belongs to us, we believe in our dreams. And they chant it every day before the start of their school. और इसका तर्जुमा ये है, उर्दू तर्जुमा ये है, would you like to say it?
एहसास है हमें पढ़ने का, शौक है आगे बढ़ने का।
Yeah, so this was a part of that vision I saw for these students, and of course I wanted them to have self-belief, self-confidence, because if they don't have these kind of skills in their life, then of course they won't be availing all the opportunities which are out there for them. Just we encourage them to go for different competitions, and we give them exposure so that they could achieve all this vision we have created for them.
Yeah, wonderful. And Maria, आपके लिए what were your first steps?
Right. Again, when I entered the school, I think मेरा बहुत ambitious vision था अपने students के लिए, that at 25 I want them to be these independent individuals who choose the career pathways of their choice, are self-sufficient. But I think जब मैं actually वो मेरे दिमाग में vision था, वो एक collective vision नहीं था, वो उन बच्चों के साथ नहीं बनाया गया था, वो उनके parents और उनकी communities के साथ नहीं बनाया गया था। जब मैं actually उस school के अंदर गई और मैंने जाना कि बच्चे जानते तो हैं उनको बनना तो है डॉक्टर या टीचर, पर उनको ये नहीं पता कि जो वो डे टू डे में कर रहे हैं वो उनके डॉक्टर या टीचर बनने से कैसे कनेक्ट करता है। आज उनके लिए क्लास 4 या 5 में पढ़ाई करना क्यों ज़रूरी है ताकि कल को वो डॉक्टर बन सकें। So मेरे लिए भी जैसे अली ने कहा, it was very important for me to ground them in that vision and how every day what we're doing connects to that larger vision and goals that they have. We students created their vision boards that you can see on the presentation as well. They took these charts home. They spoke to their parents about what aspirations their parents hold for them. हमने identify किए हमारे कौन systems of support होंगे और हमें क्या कदम उठाने पड़ेंगे. But actually वो reality तब ज़्यादा kick in हुई जब मेरी placement के 2 हफ्ते में के अंदर schools बंद हो गए और COVID की वजह से. और ये वो students थे जिनके पास technological access नहीं था. और जब मैं इनके पेरेंट्स से बात करती थी, जब मैंने वाकई उनसे मैंने ज़्यादा रिलेशनशिप्स इसी अपने पहले साल के फेलोशिप में बिल्ड की, जो कि जिसमें मैंने बच्चों के साथ ज़्यादातर रिमोटली काम किया. जब मैंने उनसे पूछा कि आप अपने बच्चों के लिए क्या चाहते हैं, तो उन्होंने कहा कि हम चाहते हैं इन बच्चों के पास वही मौके हों जो कि हाई कॉस्ट प्राइवेट स्कूल में जो बच्चा पढ़ा है उसके पास हों. तो मैंने उनसे पूछा कि इसके लिए हमें क्या करना पड़ेगा. सो व्हाट यू सी ऑन द स्लाइड हियर इज़ द कलेक्टिव एफर्ट of the parents and the students and the teachers who worked with me to make this happen. Me, together with my co-fellows, we raised funds to build a smartphone library for students who did not have access to tech. We gave out learning packs that you're seeing here for students who absolutely had no access. We had Zoom calls for those 10 out of 100 students that I had who could get onto Zoom and attend a 1-hour class with me every evening from 7 to 8. So these are the things that we did during COVID, and when schools opened, students at this point, after having had many conversations with their students and their parents, we drafted a collective vision of what we want to achieve and what are the systems of support we'll have on the way, who we need to ask for help and when, and how everything that we're doing in the day-to-day connects to this vision.
Thank you so much, Maria. I love seeing that. I love seeing the collective come together in support of your students. And I also love seeing, I think, with teachers talk a lot about differentiation. I think it's such an important, valuable thing in classrooms that are hungry to grow. And I just love that example of differentiation, even in a distance learning or a remote learning setting. That's very cool. फायजा, अगर मैं आपसे पूछूं कि आज आपकी टीचर जिन चीज़ों की बात कर रही हैं, 1.5 साल पुरानी चीज़ें, आपकी आज अपने लिए विजन क्या है?
आज इस वक्त मेरा विजन यही है कि मैं एक TFP की फेलो बनूं, ताकि जो मैंने सीखा पिछले 2 सालों में और जिस तरह मेरे अंदर ज़िंदगी में कुछ हासिल करने का अज़म आया, मैं ये चाहती हूँ कि मैं बाकी बच्चों में भी लाऊं और देखूं. और इस चीज़ TFP से इस तरह इंस्पायर हुई कि इन टीचर्स के आने से पहले मैं गलतियाँ हो जाने के डर से खामोश रहती थी. क्वेश्चन का आंसर अगर आता भी होता तो खामोश रहती कि अगर गलत हो गया कहीं ना कहीं गलत ना हो जाए. और जब मैम मारिया और मैम सईदा आई तो इन्होंने हमें सिखाया, वी विल लर्न फ्रॉम आवर मिस्टेक. हम अपनी गलतियों से ही सीखते हैं, और अगर इंसान गलती ना करेगा तो वो कैसे सीखेगा. और हमारी क्लासरूम का ये रूल भी था, वी विल लर्न फ्रॉम आवर मिस्टेक्स. और इस विजन को अचीव करने के लिए मुझे गुड स्टडी, हार्ड वर्क, स्ट्रगल करने के साथ साथ काइंड और लविंग भी होना होगा, बिकॉज स्टूडेंट्स प्यार से समझते हैं, डांट से नहीं.
थैंक यू वेरी मच फायदा. और तैमूर, आपसे अगर मैं पूछूं, आपका गोल क्या है, आपकी विजन क्या है?
मेरा गोल और मेरा विजन ये है कि मैं बड़ा होकर एक सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर बनूं, क्योंकि आगे सारा दौर कंप्यूटर का ही आ रहा है.
बिल्कुल.
और साथ ही साथ मैं ये भी चाहता हूँ कि सिर्फ मैं ही नहीं, मेरे आगे मेरे क्लास फेलोज और मेरे जो उनसे भाई हैं वो भी इसी तरह ही अपनी गोल और अपने ड्रीम को सर कर पाएं.
थैंक यू वेरी मच तैमूर. मेरी बहुत उम्मीद है कि आप दोनों के जो ख्वाब हैं ये पूरे हों, एंड जिस क्लैरिटी से आप बात कर रहे हैं कि इन गोल्स तक पहुंचने के लिए आपको क्या करना पड़ेगा, मुझे लग रहा है हो जाएंगे. एंड सो फायदा, आपके लिए तो मैं स्पॉट रखूंगी 10 साल बाद वाले टीचर फॉर पाकिस्तान कोहॉर्ट में. वो स्पॉट आपके लिए रिजर्व्ड है. थैंक यू वेरी मच. So we've talked about the juxtaposition though of the where the state of learning was when you started, and these really big ambitious visions that you're setting out for yourselves is a little bit incredible, I must say. And so the thing that I want to ask you is, how far did you get, or how far have you so far gotten in progress along the course of that vision or that goal that you're pursuing? So I'm going to come first to you, Ali.
Yeah, I would definitely go first. So it has been 6 to 7 months so far with in this fellowship, and I still see my students progressing. क्योंकि अगर मैं academics की बात करूँ, I recently took a summative exam that is exactly like this के folded जहाँ हम grade level देख रहे होते हैं, and these students have come 2 grade levels where they were previously above that. तो आज when they are sitting in grade 7 और अब 6 grade level तक हमारे students आ चुके हैं, and they are just behind of 1 grade, which is a tremendous achievement in just 6 to 7 months. और उसके अलावा मैंने जो हमने शुरू में जो बात की थी सोशल पॉलिटिकल अवेयरनेस की, हार्मनी की, इंक्लूजन की, तो क्लासरूम के अंदर हमने क्या किया है कि देयर आर डिफरेंट स्टूडेंट्स फ्रॉम डिफरेंट एथनिसिटीज़ फ्रॉम डिफरेंट रीजन्स, और हम वो जब आपस में बैठते हैं दे लर्न फ्रॉम ईच अदर, दे लर्न फ्रॉम ईच अदर्स कल्चर्स, एंड दिस इज़ वेरी ऑप्टिमिस्टिक फॉर मी बिकॉज फॉर अ कंट्री लाइक अस we need to promote this diversity, and we must see them accepting each other and going together for a collective goal. Apart from it, हमारे क्लास के अंदर जब मैं देखता हूँ कि प्रोग्रेस उसमें भी नज़र आती है, when I see them taking part in discussions, स्टडी सर्कल्स होते हैं जहाँ वो डिफरेंट हाइपोथेटिकल टॉपिक्स के ऊपर बात करते हैं, वो मैं कभी उनसे पूछता हूँ कि व्हाट काइंड ऑफ पॉलिसी वुड यू सी इन द क्लासरूम इफ़ यू आर अ प्रिंसिपल, और कभी मैं पूछता हूँ कि हाउ वुड यू टीच इफ़ यू आर एन इंग्लिश टीचर लाइक मी. तो दोज थिंग्स आर वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग, क्योंकि जो पीछे जो मेरा विजन है वो मैं ये देखना चाहता हूँ कि दीज स्टूडेंट्स मस्ट हैव सम बिट ऑफ क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग एट दिस पॉइंट, एंड दे मस्ट अंडरस्टैंड हाउ टू सॉल्व दिस डिफरेंट प्रॉब्लम्स अराउंड देम. जब मैं कहता हूँ कि हाउ वुड यू एक्ट एज अ प्रिंसिपल, तो मेरा पीछे मकसद ये होता है कि देयर वुड बी सम प्रॉब्लम्स दिस स्टूडेंट्स माइट बी फेसिंग, और अगर आप प्रिंसिपल होते तो फिर आप क्या करते हैं सॉल्व करने के लिए. तो ये हर चीज़ में, चाहे एकेडमिक हो, चाहे सोशल इमोशनल लर्निंग हो, टीम वर्क हो, ग्रुप में डिस्कशंस हो, these kids are doing wonderful job as of now, and I'm really hopeful because I still have 1 year and a half, and so these good kids would be, my students who would be in grade 8 next year might look to be in grade 9 or 10, hopefully.
Yeah. You're not just going to close the achievement gap, you're going to beat it.
Yeah, of course.
Beat it out of your classroom altogether.
Yeah, hopefully.
That's very promising. तैमूर, अगर आपसे पूछूं, आपके टीचर ने तो बात की कि होलिस्टिकली पूरी क्लास ने क्या प्रोग्रेस की है, आपके अपने लिए पिछले 6-7 महीने में कौन सी ऐसी अपने अंदर अपने चेंज पाया है, अपनी लर्निंग के अंदर अपने चेंज पाया है जिस पे आपको सबसे ज़्यादा फ़ख्र है?
सबसे पहली चीज़ तो ये है कि मुझ में बहुत ज़्यादा कॉन्फिडेंस आ गया है, क्योंकि पहले मैं बड़ों से बात करते हुए डरता था, उनके सामने बोलने से डरता था, और अब वैसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. अब आप सब देख सकते हैं कि मैं आपके सामने बोल रहा हूँ. दूसरी चीज़ ये कि पार्टिसिपेशन भी बिल्कुल भी नहीं थी, ज़ीरो. जब आए हमारे टीचर्स तो इन्होंने ज़बरदस्ती हमें एक स्पीच कंपटीशन में लेकर आए. फर्स्ट टाइम तो हमने पढ़ ली सर झुका के सबके सामने, लेकिन हम लोग फेल हो गए उसमें. फेल नहीं होता, फेल होता है फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट इन लर्निंग, और ये हौसला हमें हमारे प्रिंसिपल से मिला था. तो उसके बाद अगेन जब हमारा वही स्पीच कंपटीशन होया तो उसमें हम लोग सब के सब लड़के पास हो गए. और दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि लिटरेसी और इंग्लिश पे हमने बहुत गौर कर लिया था. हमने इंग्लिश को पढ़ना सीख लिया था, इंग्लिश के सेंटेंसेस बनाना शुरू कर दिए थे. उससे पैराग्राफ, और पैराग्राफ से उसी पैराग्राफ के अंदर से ही हमने क्वेश्चन निकालना शुरू कर दिए थे, और उन क्वेश्चन के हम लोग आंसर भी खुद ढूंढते होते थे. इसको हम पूरे को अब हम लोग अंडरस्टैंडिंग कम्प्रीहेंशन कहते हैं. और साथ ही साथ हम लोगों ने एक स्टीम के कंपटीशन में भी हिस्सा लिया, जिसमें फिर हम लोगों ने बिल्डिंग ब्लॉक की कैटेगरी में अपने बाराकों के सेक्टर में फर्स्ट पोजीशन हासिल की थी.
और ये जो पीछे तस्वीर है ये उसको
जी और मैं बहुत ज़्यादा इम्प्रूव कर रहा हूँ, और मेरे बहुत ज़्यादा और भी क्लास फेलोज़ हैं जो इम्प्रूव कर रहे हैं, और इंशाल्लाह हम लोग आगे भी इम्प्रूव करते रहेंगे और हमारा फ्यूचर बहुत ब्राइट होगा.
थैंक यू वेरी मच तैमूर. और एक बात जो तैमूर ने खुद नहीं बताई आपको वो ये है कि तैमूर अपनी क्लास के क्लास लीडर हैं, एंड सो आप वक्त निकाल के आए, आपका वक्त सबसे कीमती है हम सब में से. सो थैंक यू वेरी मच तैमूर. एंड फ़ायदा, अगर आपसे मैं पूछूं कि आपका क्या ख्याल है, आपने क्या एक ऐसी अचीवमेंट आपके लिए जो पिछले 6-7 महीने में रही, वो क्या रही है? सॉरी, पिछले 2 साल में रही.
पिछले 2 सालों में 2 चीज़ें ऐसी हैं जिन पर मुझे बहुत फ़ख्र है. फर्स्ट, माय इंग्लिश स्पीकिंग एंड राइटिंग स्किल्स, इन टीचर्स के आने से पहले कोई मैं सेल्फ राइटिंग नहीं कर पाती थी, रीडिंग में भी मुश्किल होती थी। लेकिन जब ये टीचर्स आई और इन्होंने हमें इंग्लिश में कंटेंट सुनाया और हम लोगों ने क्लास में बहुत सारी मूवीज़ कार्टून्स इंग्लिश में देखे और क्लास में इंग्लिश स्टोरी रीड्स करना शुरू कर दी। और जो कुछ भी हम रीड करते हैं उसके कुछ वर्ड्स हम अपनी क्लास में वर्ड पे ऐड कर देते हैं, जिससे हमने बहुत सारे वर्ड सीखे। वर्ड से सेंटेंसेस बनाए, सेंटेंसेस से पैराग्राफ और पैराग्राफ से स्टोरी बनाई। और नाउ आई कैन राइट अ स्टोरी टू माई ओन सेल्फ। आज मैं खुद एक स्टोरी लिख सकती हूँ अपने ओन सेल्फ से। और दूसरी चीज़ ये कि मेरे अंदर कॉन्फिडेंस आया। कॉन्फिडेंस इन टीचर्स ने मेरे अंदर कॉन्फिडेंस पैदा किया, चीज़ों में पार्टिसिपेट करने का कॉन्फिडेंस और किसी के सामने आके अपने हक के लिए बोलने का कॉन्फिडेंस। रिसेंटली मैंने एक स्टीम कंपटीशन में हिस्सा लिया था जिसमें मैंने 167 स्कूल्स में बिल्डिंग ब्लॉक्स की कैटेगरी में टॉप 5 में विन किया था। That's all about me.
Thank you very much, Faida. That's amazing. And I want to ask Maria, one of Faida's teachers. आपकी क्योंकि फेलोशिप खत्म हो गई है, हम 2 साल का पूरा एक्सपीरियंस इन टोटलिटी देख सकते हैं। Maria, what progress were you able to make over the course of the 2 years?
Thank you. I think in terms of the data, जैसे अली ने बात की scaffolded assessment की, जिसे हम grade level assess करते हैं. So in the first 6 months of my fellowship, which was all in COVID and distance learning practices पे काम कर रहे थे उस टाइम पे, it was very मैं शुरू में काफ़ी hopeless थी कि ये distance learning mechanism पे तो जो learning level है वो sustain ही हो जाए, बहुत बड़ी बात है। I don't think कि हम achieve ये कर सकेंगे, but I think my students and their perseverance and grit enabled us to actually bridge 1.5 years of achievement gap in social studies and 2 years of achievement gap in English. These were the 2 subjects that I was teaching in just 6 months, first 6 months of my fellowship. And जो remaining हमारा 1 साल का gap था वो हमने over the next year जिसमें हमने एक hybrid किया of distance learning and in-person learning when schools opened. But I think what would more beautifully capture their growth is one of my जैसे फ़ायज़ा ने बात की about English reading and speaking and writing. एक मेरी student थी, उसका नाम है महमूना। उसको बहुत शौक है कहानियाँ लिखने का भी, सुनाने का भी, पढ़ने का भी। और शुरू में जब मैं उससे पहला scaffolded assessment लिया था तो उसके अंदर उसको एक क्वेश्चन था जिसमें उसने एक लेटर लिखना था अपनी फ्रेंड को, इनवाइटिंग हर टू अ बर्थडे पार्टी। उसने कहा टीचर मुझे लेटर तो लिखना आता है और मैं लिखना चाहती हूँ, बड़ी एक्साइटेड भी हूँ, लेकिन मैं उर्दू में लिखूँगी। तो मैंने उससे कहा नहीं महमूना आप कोशिश करो, आप लिख सकती हो, आप मुझसे थोड़ी हेल्प ले लेना इसमें। बट शी डिडंट, शी सेड मुझे अंग्रेज़ी ज़बान से डर लगता है, मैं नहीं कर सकती है। बट इन माई सेकेंड ईयर ऑफ फेलोशिप ओवर टाइम वो चीज़ ऐसे आई थिंक इतना ड्रास्टिकली वो उसमें चेंज आया कि in my second year of fellowship, I remember it was February last year. So this was, I had been with the students for about 1.5 years. मैं स्कूल आई और दौड़ते हुए मेरे पास आई और उसकी फिस्ट पे there was this like a golden star that was actually bigger than her fist. And she showed me, she said, ये मुझे प्रिंसिपल ने दिया है, मैंने एक कहानी लिखी है। तो मैंने कहा आप दिखाएं क्या कहानी है। तो वो जो बड़ी वाली जो लूज शीट की 4 sides होती हैं वो भरी हुई थी एक कहानी से in English, which was about this girl who's living on a different planet and exploring life over there. And it was very creative and it was beautiful, and I was actually astounded to see how well she'd written. Of course, it had some mistakes and spelling errors, but my takeaway from that was that she attempted. She not really attempted; she came through with it, and that's, I think, that would capture how far these students have come.
Yeah, certainly. And thank you so much for sharing that, Maria. And I think the question that I want to come to now, both of you, and as you've spoken to us, you've helped us unpack a lot of what you do in the classroom to try and get at this impact. But I want to ask you, if you think about it now specifically, वो कौन सी ऐसी strategies रही हैं for both inside and inside the classroom in your pedagogical practice that you think have been the most critical in helping you achieve this impact? So, Alif, we can ask you to go first.
So, like, primarily, this is because of efficient planning, of course. क्योंकि जब हम क्लास में जाते हैं, we make a lesson plan that is completely planned, जहाँ हम group practice डाल रहे होते हैं, independent practice डाल रहे होते हैं. So in those 40 minutes, those students are engaged in the group practice, in the independent practice, and also in the end they have the exit ticket. And we analyze them, we assess them, what we taught them during that period. So we do a planning for that. We also have a proper planning for the unit test and the unit planning. We get a unit planning. We also formalize a long-term planning where we make a plan for the whole textbook. What we have to teach them, how we have to teach them, what should be the deadlines, and at what level these students might be seeing themselves after spending this much time. So primarily I would say the first strategy for me is planning. And without planning, this would not be achieved in this short period of time. And secondly, just to create a bridge of that education gap, I take remedial classes with these students. I take those classes sometime before the start of the school and after the school. Jahan, like I have categorized these students into 3 groups. Some students are outstanding, some are on average, and some are below average. So I have to take these remedial classes with students who are performing at average level or below average level, so that we can promote them, we can bring them up to the same level जहाँ outstanding students होते हैं. तो इस remedial classes के अंदर हम जहाँ revision कर रहे होते हैं, हम practice करवा रहे होते हैं, वहाँ हम फिर बच्चों को independent practice को भी promote करते हैं, वहाँ assessment भी लेते हैं. तो they are actually remedial of they have actually lost in the previous grades. और फिर उसके अलावा जाहिर है we engage them to work with each other. जहाँ like I have created a buddy system for them, as I mentioned before. In that buddy system we have students from different ethnicities and also from different regions. So jahan they have this exposure to understand from each other, they also get this experience of learning from each other, where one student would be the leader of that system, and he would be teaching the rest of the students. So in that triangle of 3 students, they have primarily first, they are getting exposure of their culture, and secondly, they are helping each other in writing, in reading, in performing well, in understanding different questions. So these are different strategies that I've been using so far in the classroom with the help of these students, of course, because without them taking part in the buddy system, without them taking part in the remedial classes, this would not happen. So these all strategies have been working, of course, and some strategies when we try to tweak them depending on the needs of these students.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very insightful. And Maria, what about for you?
I think the foremost thing was, पहले भी मैंने इसके पर touch upon किया था, just connecting the day to day to their life vision. अगर हम एक simple topic पढ़ रहे हैं, adjectives, तो क्यों ज़रूरी है हमारे लिए वो एडजेक्टिव पढ़ना, कैसे वो आपके सेंटेंस को इन्हांस करेगा. अगर किसी बच्चे ने राइटर या टीचर बनना है तो उसके लिए क्यों ज़रूरी है कि वो अपने नाउन से पहले वो एडजेक्टिव बनाए. उसकी स्टोरी पढ़ने में भी खूबसूरत लगेगी, उसको भी मज़ा आएगा, रीडर को भी मज़ा आएगा. सो जस्ट कनेक्ट एवरी स्टूडेंट लर्निंग ऑब्जेक्टिव का एक स्ट्रॉन्ग वाई के अंदर बच्चों को ग्राउंड करना कि ये ऑब्जेक्टिव जो आज हम पढ़ रहे हैं ये आपके लॉन्ग टर्म विजन से कैसे कनेक्टेड है. I think another thing that really helped was what we call differentiated learning. is कि हर बच्चे की learning needs फ़र्क हैं. कोई बच्चा अगर average मैंने आपको बताया था कि बच्चों का 1 पे था when I entered, but कुछ बच्चे 2 पे भी थे, 3 पे भी थे, कुछ बच्चे 0.5 पे भी थे. So what we were then doing, what me and my co-fellow both were doing was I had divided the class into 4 quartiles and I would ensure कि in terms of their learning ability. और जब हम क्लास में group practice उनको कराते थे तो वो उनके लिए ही बनी उसी ग्रुप और उनकी लर्निंग एबिलिटी के लिए डिज़ाइन होती थी. और जो असेसमेंट होती थी उसमें भी बोनस क्वेश्चंस होते थे उन बच्चों के लिए जो उसको अटेम्प्ट कर सकते हैं. और फिर बच्चे हर 2 हफ्ते बाद अपनी प्रोग्रेस ट्रैक कर सकते थे कि अगर मैं पहले क्वार्टाइल 4 में थी, अब मैं क्वार्टाइल 3 में आ गई हूँ, तो बच्चे भी उसके अंदर इन्वेस्ट करते थे. और अगर उनको पता था कि अगर इंग्लिश में क्वार्टाइल 3 में आ गई हूँ लेकिन मैं सोशल स्टडीज़ में क्वार्टाइल 4 पे भी हूँ, सो आई नीड टू स्टार्ट वर्किंग हार्डर. Something that really worked well for me with experience was, and I think in theory we all believe in audiovisual learning, but this is what it looks like in the classroom, right? So you'll see sentences जो एक मेरी student ने बनाए हुए हैं, I think वो presentation में नज़र नहीं आ रहा, उसे अपने हर sentence के आगे एक picture draw की हुई है of what that sentence means to her. So जब हम classroom में भी कुछ पढ़ते थे, अगर मैं उनको बताती थी कि डाइवर्सिटी एक चीज़ होती है, कल्चरल डाइवर्सिटी एक चीज़ होती है, तो हमने क्लास में कल्चरल डाइवर्सिटी डे सेलिब्रेट किया. सो दे नो कि ये डाइवर्सिटी एक एब्स्ट्रैक्ट कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं है, ये हमारी क्लास के अंदर है. अगर हम कॉन्फ्लिक्ट की बात करें, हाउ डज दैट लुक लाइक इन डे टू डे, एंड हाउ कैन वी, एंड देन हाउ डज इट लुक लाइक इन द वर्ल्ड? एंड वी सॉ, यू नो, क्या कौन सी डॉक्यूमेंट्री देखी थी हमने फायजा ऑन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट?
हमने कॉन्फ्लिक्ट की एक वीडियो देखी थी जिसके अंदर सीरिया में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हो रहा था, और इससे हमने ये भी सीखा था कि कॉन्फ्लिक्ट जो है वो छोटे पैमाने पे नहीं होता, वो बहुत बड़े पैमाने पे होता है। जैसे कि सीरिया में कोई भी बच्चे बाहर पढ़ने नहीं जा सकते, वो घर में अपने बहन भाइयों से पढ़ते हैं। इतना कॉन्फ्लिक्ट था वहाँ पे।
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is really the heart of the matter, right? Helping us unpack what exactly it is that you do in terms of teaching and learning strategies in the classroom that hopefully comes together in the form of the data that you're seeing, the growth data that you're seeing. What I'd love to know from you first, Maria, is you'd never taught before, though, right? You came into this 2-year teaching program as somebody who has no background in education or in teaching. What enabled you in your own growth as a teacher? Top 2-3 things that were most important.
I think the support from the school staff was pivotal, especially during COVID. I remember मैं बहुत परेशान थी कि ये बच्चे learning packs लेने तो आएंगे, लेकिन ये कुछ बच्चे इसी community में रहते हैं, कुछ बाहर में रहते हैं, तो वो क्या जगह होगी जहाँ से ये collect करेंगे और फिर उसको वापस submit करेंगे। तो हमारी प्रिंसिपल बहुत सपोर्टिव थी। जब उन्होंने देखा कि ये एफर्ट कर रहे हैं, तो उन्होंने वहाँ पे हम एक गार्ड को हमारे साथ उन्हें डेजिग्नेट कर दिया और उन्होंने कहा कि ये यहाँ बैठे रहेंगे, आप जब आएंगे आप इनको कॉल करेंगी, ये आपकी मदद करेंगे, जो आप नहीं डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर पाएंगे ये आप पीछे से नाम लिख जाएंगे, ये डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर देंगे और ये कलेक्ट भी कर लेंगे। So उनकी support बाद में जब schools also open in all the, because a lot of the things that we're doing were very unconventional. So the principal support was essential, and she really came through for us. And another thing I think was the coaching support that I was getting from Teach for Pakistan. मेरी कोच हैं, उनका नाम सरैया है, वो मेरी क्लासरूम में आती थी every 2 months, और वो क्लास में आके वो चीज़ें ऑब्जर्व करती थी जो मैं डे टू डे में नहीं देख पाती थी। एंड आफ्टर द क्लासरूम ऑब्जर्वेशन वी वुड हैव अ डीब्रीफ कन्वर्सेशन एट द ऑफिस where we would reflect on, so here's where you were in the last classroom observation, here's where you are now, and here's where your students are. पहले आपके बच्चे मुझसे बात करने में शर्माते थे, अब वो आके मुझे मैम सरैया कर रहे होते हैं। So do you see how much, and then we would also reflect on, so how can we grow? What are the areas of growth now? So I feel like she brought that external perspective that I couldn't have in the classroom, and that in a job where you don't have a lot of day-to-day oversight, I think that was really helpful in enabling me and my students to grow.
And that's really helpful for us to figure out, right? I think one of the biggest questions we think about is how do you support teachers well? Ali, for you?
Yeah, like, so some things are quite similar. So I'll definitely go, starting off from the coaching support we get in the whole teaching process and become better teachers. So my coach is Haris Nawaz. Like, we get consistent feedback from him in all our planning stuff, on the lesson plan, on the LTP, and also he comes to our class for observation, as Maria mentioned, after 2 months or after 1.5 months, जिसमें he observes our class. वो हमारे जो टीचर्स प्रैक्टिसेस हैं उनको भी देख रहे होते हैं। ही ऑल्सो सीज कि वो स्टूडेंट्स एक्शंस क्या हैं, स्टूडेंट्स प्रैक्टिसेस क्या हैं। तो टीच फॉर पाकिस्तान में हमारा एक कॉन्सेप्ट है कि इफ़ यू डोंट हैव दिस इक्वलाइजेशन ऑफ टीचर्स एक्शंस इक्वल टू स्टूडेंट्स एक्शन, वी वॉन्ट हैव ऑप्टिमम लर्निंग इन्वायरमेंट इन द क्लासरूम। तो वो इस चीज़ को इंश्योर कर रहे होते हैं टाइम टू टाइम कंसिस्टेंटली, ताकि हम बेहतर टीचर्स बन सकते हैं। उसके अलावा ऑफ कोर्स जैसे आई मेंशन, like as Maria mentioned about the role of principal, same goes in our school. हमारे जो principal हैं, he understands education, he understands learning, उनको पता है कि learning होती कैसे। And like I still remember in the first week of my fellowship in the school, उन्होंने मुझे ये कहा था, Ali, do not pressurize yourself completing the syllabus and completing the textbook, just work on the students' skills. उनको सिखा दें how to learn. ये ना बता दें कि आप like bringing them in the classroom information दे के in the end they know nothing. Like, it is because of his support that these students have achieved 2 great levels in just 7 months. Yeah. अगर मैं किताब complete करने पे लग जाता, syllabus के पीछे लग जाता, तो maybe these students would not have achieved what they have achieved currently. And it is his support that we have been working in a very optimum environment, full of learning, full of teaching, and we are enjoying it. और फिर उसके अलावा ये कि
sorry I'm interrupting you, but and the lovely thing is that he's here today supporting his teacher.
Yeah,
and
he
his
is here
student.
with us.
He's sitting in the audience.
Mr.
He's taking
Rahman
time
Baksh.
off from school to be here today. Which is
Yeah,
absolutely
thank you
lovely.
so much, sir, for everything, for all the support. Apart from it, like from our own organization, we have different gatherings. Some are formal gatherings and some are informal gatherings. For example, we have Milap, which is a kind of mixed formal, informal, jahan we interact with different staff members, we interact with you, we interact with alumni, with seniors, and with our own cohort fellows. जहाँ हम फिर बात करते हैं कि what you do in your class, फिर स्टाफ हमें बताते हैं क्या काम करते हैं, कैसे करते हैं, तो वहाँ से भी हमें सपोर्ट मिल जाती है कि ये जो गोल है इट्स सो मच कलेक्टिव. ये नहीं कि आई डोंट गो टू ऑफिस डेली, मैं कहीं और काम कर रहा होता हूँ, 2 महीने बाद मैं ऑफिस जाता हूँ और लोग मुझसे पूछते नहीं हैं. But there is this system in the organization that we are all continuously connected in the form of formal gatherings and informal gatherings. और उसके अलावा एक बहुत important चीज़ है which I like a lot, that is the CGM. We call it coaching group meetings, and it happens like after 1.5 months, कभी 1 महीने बाद भी होता है, and we have a CGM tomorrow. और जिसमें हम क्या करते हैं कि जो हमारे जो कोच हैं जैसे हारिस हैं, तो all the fellows in this group we meet at one point. And we share our successes, we share our failures, we try to get feedback from him. और फिर at the same time वो बहुत ही informal भी हो जाता है. We talk about our personal lives, we talk about things we do, we love to do. So because of all these things, I would say my own teaching is being furnished, it is getting better, and at the same time I as a person is improving because I have a lot of avenues to interact with my staff members, with other fellows, and with different communities. और फिर आखिर में जो important चीज़ है, that is the stakeholder, the stake that is with the parents. और I still remember तैमूर की मदर एक दिन आई थी हमारे स्कूल में और उन्होंने कहा कि शुरू में मेरा ये कॉन्सेप्ट था जब मैं अंग्रेजी पढ़ाता था, मैं कहता था कि जो भी प्रैक्टिस हो रही है वो क्लासरूम के अंदर हो जाए, वो बच्चे घर से काम ना करें. उन्होंने आके मुझे ये कहा कि आप होमवर्क नहीं देते हैं और क्योंकि तैमूर घर आता है, ट्यूशन जाता है, काम करने को कुछ नहीं होता, तो उसके बाद जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ दैट पेरेंट वी हैव स्टार्टेड गिविंग होमवर्क टू स्टूडेंट्स ताकि हम जहाँ प्रैक्टिस हम स्कूल के अंदर कर रहे हैं वी कैन कंटिन्यू द सेम प्रैक्टिस एट होम एंड लाइक वो फिर रीइंफोर्स हो जाती है जो हम जिस पे हम फोकस करना चाहते हैं. सो दैट्स इट.
Absolutely lovely. Thank you both. I really want to thank you for helping me unpack this classroom black box, and big thank you to our students as well. I think you make all of this feel more real and help us understand it so much more concretely than we would without you. So I think Teach for Pakistan's work through the support of the FCDO and the Ministry of Federal Education and the Federal Directorate of Education, we've been able to scale up this program to a point where we're now seeing this kind of excellence in teaching and learning happening across 60 schools across the federal capital. And what that's helping us do is really learn at a level that we've never been able to learn before. And what are the big kind of lessons that your conversation and your work is helping us learn? And the first one is this big piece. Hum aksar jab when we think about reform, we think about teacher recruitment, selection, development, and management as isolated pieces. But certainly from this conversation, the one thing that is shouting out at me is it's all inextricably linked if you're really serious about those outcomes that you're trying to get at for students. There's no way to separate those pieces out. You have to very much think of them together. I've also loved hearing the 2-3 game changers. One, the clarity of purpose and outcomes that excellent teachers work with. Vision, as you guys were all talking about. The second big thing I think standing out is coaching being the main driver, right? And coaching is something that is we're still early, particularly in Pakistan, in our discourse and in our pedagogical practice, understanding how coaching is different from teacher training per se. And so thank you very much for helping us understand that. And then of course the final big lesson coming out of this being empowering teachers to be able to teach at the right level, how critical that is for students' growth. And with that, I'm going to close the formal session. I think we may have time for a couple of questions. So thank you very much to the panelists, and we'll open up the floor.
We have one at the back.
We have some at the back.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Rabia Malik from the British Council.
I've been following the Citizens Foundation since like the inception on LinkedIn, and I can shamelessly say that I am a groupie. So thank you for all the work that you're putting in there.
Did you mean Teach for Pakistan?
Sorry, come again?
Did you mean Teach for Pakistan?
No, the Citizen Foundation, the fellowship program, the one that you're working with, right?
The Teach for Pakistan.
Yeah, the Teach for Pakistan.
We have a lovely relationship with the Citizens Foundation.
I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, but I've been following the fellowship program, and I've always been very curious at what happens after the 2 years, because I personally know a few of the fellows, and because of being from Islamabad. And after the 2 years, I was just thinking, and I've just been very curious and wishfully thinking that maybe there's some sort of partnership with the public sector where these champions can go into the public sector and reach out to as district subject experts or somebody and add to the community. So I just want to know about the plans after the 2 years when the fellowship ends for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll answer that very quickly myself. So in Teach for Pakistan, as you can see, fellows come to us from all backgrounds, academic and professional backgrounds, very few directly from education or teaching. After the fellowship is complete, 77% of them continue to work directly in education or poverty alleviation or development work. So many of them are doing that from the non-profit sector, from the private sector, but some are also doing it in partnership working with government. And so some of that work is already happening. They've been part of a lot of the big reform projects that you've seen in Punjab and KP in the last few years, including especially curriculum, textbook, and teacher reform. With organizations like the Citizens Foundation, they're working at the school level. They're also working on the more kind of game-changing pieces like developing their lab school, developing their out-of-schools program. All of that to say lots of variety, as we would like to see from Teach for Pakistan alumni across not just education, but in the key sectors that influence education. A formal partnership with the public sector is a fantastic idea. I think that is very much where we would like for people who've had this experience to be going in large numbers. So if you have an idea of how to make that happen, please talk to me. We'd love to discuss that in more detail. Thank you. And I think Bela has a question. I mean, I think it's a fantastic idea. I think there's lots of conversation happening with the Federal Directorate of Education that is about learning a lot of the lessons that are coming out of this, because they are investing in this program now through the Education Fellows Project, where they've invested in scaling up the work here in Islamabad. And so there is a big effort in learning what is this teaching us about teacher recruitment, and teacher development in general. But I think the specific idea that you are suggesting of a fellowship program that is a little bit more homegrown is a really novel one, and I think certainly one that is worth exploring. And Faiza here, I don't know if you were here, you heard that, right? So I think if people like her decide to become fellows, they're going to, yeah.
Yes.
Right. We're going to do it. Yeah, and Yeah, and I think you're the best person to advise us on this, especially because every year Belapa is part of helping train the fellows. Every cohort of fellows that's come into this program has had something to do with Belapa, which is we're very proud of.
Okay. Thank you, fellows and students, for coming over and sharing your experiences with us. It's been really informative. My question to both the fellows first is about their interaction with the government teachers in the schools they've been to. It was not talked about in the session. So how was your experience? Because you surely were not working in silos. So what, if you can tell us a bit about that. And for Teach for Pakistan, I would like to know what is the ratio of urban-rural fellows in your organization. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for the question. Yes, of course, we are only 2 fellows working in that government setup, working with our colleagues who are from government background. To be honest, I would say the environment, the teaching environment is healthy. Because they also go to school, like primarily they are also there for teaching. But एक factor उसमें ये आता है कि which I would say we have very short period of time जो हम ये समझते हैं कि 2 साल है हमारे पास और इन 2 सालों में जितना हमसे काम हो सकता है we'll do it. क्योंकि उसके बाद maybe we would be teaching or maybe we would not be teaching. लेकिन जो government teachers हैं maybe they won't be thinking with that perspective. Because they serve in this setup for 20 years, for 25 years, for 30 years, and at some point they would postpone something, they would maybe think or postpone it for the next day, लेकिन we try to do it on the right day. और फिर उसके बाद ये है कि जो हम government teachers के से बहुत सारी support भी लेते हैं, जैसे they have better experience and they know how to manage those registers in the classroom, और हम उनसे सीखते हैं कि how to मार्क प्रॉपर अटेंडेंस, फिर उसके बाद ड्रॉप आउट हो तो उसको कैसे हैंडल करते हैं, न्यू एडमिशन में कैसे हैंडल करते हैं. तो इस जो एक ग्रुप बना हुआ है, दिस कोलैबोरेटिव और सपोर्टिव एनवायरनमेंट, इसमें we would definitely would not work in a proper way if we don't get support, if we don't seek support from these government teachers. और उसमें it varies of course. कुछ teachers they are more active than us, और कुछ टीचर्स हैं जैसे मैंने कहा दे ट्राई टू पोस्टपोन समथिंग, लेकिन जो एक की रोल प्ले करता है दैट इज द रोल ऑफ प्रिंसिपल इन दैट सेटअप. अगर आपके इन दोस इट्स ऑल बिकॉज ऑफ दैट प्रिंसिपल, हाउ विजनरी ही इज, हाउ थॉटफुल ही इज, हाउ इंगेजिंग ही इज, द होल सिस्टम रिजेंबल्स दैट माइंडसेट. If he believes that all the teachers, irrespective of fellows from Teach for Pakistan, should be working for students' learning, for their achievement, then the school setup would definitely improve. And if this is not the case, or 50% not the case, then we would get different results. So this is something, my observation at this point in time.
Thank you very much. And unfortunately, we're going to have to close the session here. Thank you very much for the questions. Thank you for the engagement. And of course, all of us are going to be around if you'd like to talk more after the session. Thank you.
To Khadija, we don't want to get in the way of people's lunch, so lunch is now available. Please, if we can reconvene at 2:15. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You can hear me, so bata dein.
People from 3 different continents together, from the South, Pakistan, Kenya and Brazil. And we believe that when people come together, trying to find that common core that will make a reform that lies at the, what should I say, the core or the heart of what will unleash learning for the children of all these countries.
Can you see this? Acha, what happens once? What happens? One, will I be able to do other presenters?
O programa Salto Salto, o surgimento dessa ideia, eu acho que é uma convergência de visões de como a gente podia formar lideranças do Sul Global, como a gente podia fomentar coalizões para fazer reformas educacionais bem-sucedidas, que tivessem um engajamento grande de um grupo plural. E a gente conseguiu pensar como formar os public goods, né? Os materiais, como deixar um legado também de recursos educacionais e de referências sobre reformas educacionais bem-sucedidas.
O South South surgiu de uma conversa entre Denis Misny, que é o CEO da Fundação Lehman, e a Rachel Hinton do FCDO. E a ideia toda era, puxa, já tem tanta experiência bacana no Global South, né, no Sul Global, e as pessoas mesmo do Sul Global não conhecem.
We have 7 partners here who have come together, some who know each other quite well, some who are strangers, but we are organizing around this common aim, which is to bring people together, to be able to use coalitions better and more effectively, to understand where the challenges happen and how you can work through them when you have people with very different aims sometimes.
So what we wanted to ensure was that actually those who came together and actually had the opportunity to visit and see firsthand also brought their own experiences of reform and bold reform and reform that we knew already had an impact on learning.
And so our hope is that we discuss what we're producing with these education policy experts and really understand how to iteratively improve them so that when we publish them at the end of the year as a public goods library, hopefully people in other countries working in education policy, they are as good as they can be.
So I think we are united in this challenge of a lot of schooling but with very little learning, a lot of interventions happening everywhere in government and in civil society, but not united to bring the big impact to get every child to go to school but also to learn. How do we create a reform that is sustained over different governments and supported by both the government and the opposition at the same time?
So this is a unique journey of 100 people coming to Sao Paulo and from here going to Sobral to see what happened over there and what can we do when we return after learning from here. How do we elevate some of the solutions we may have in our country but have not been looking for it in that way.
I think first of all, I'm carrying back home the hope that if you have determination, will, and you have right kind of skill to manage a change, things are possible.
What I learned is that we have to bring everyone who matters around the table. So getting the politicians together rather than seeing them as not part of us. If politicians own this and drive the agenda, then we are more likely to succeed because it is them who even allocate resources and drive parents and the other people easily.
And the authority given to the head teacher and the community to make decisions and have the trust to spend the money right and to give accounts to the people without a problem. I use this money for this reason and look, this is the outcome. So this outcome-based use of financing.
Education cannot be improved unless communities are at the center of it. So a school is the beating heart of a community.
Mas a escola não estava fazendo diferença na vida dos filhos e filhas porque os meninos não aprendiam. E eles não aprendiam porque eles não sabiam ler. Se você não sabe ler, como é que você vai resolver um problema de matemática? Como é que você vai entender a história? Como é que você vai entender geografia? Como é que você vai entender qualquer coisa?
Nós estávamos assim muito determinados a afastar qualquer tipo de justificativa com relação a não poder fazer, porque as crianças não poderiam se aprender por esse ou aquele motivo. Nós estamos determinados a garantir que todas se alfabetizassem.
Levando em consideração os aspectos históricos, os aspectos políticos, econômicos e sobrenaturais de cada lugar. Não é? Primeiro, e entendendo que o protagonismo da implementação de uma política educacional nos estados e municípios deve ser dos que dirigem aquele estado e os municípios. A gente tinha um projeto, sabia o que queria e iria enfrentar todos os desafios que se colocassem para ser concretizado aquele objetivo. Kind of organization that I saw is what I'm carrying home. That opened my eyes. Education opens frontiers for those who use it well.
Taking with me that teachers can be energized and be very positive about their work.
Development of the skills that you acquire when you're in school can enable you to fit and be part of the society. Have the realization that they don't need to depend on other people for them to be transformed.
My job is to go back and connect our history and our tradition and our ideas with young people and their ability to lead.
Knowing that it is possible to go down to the local level and transform education in, say, 15, 18 years, it gives a lot of hope to people, right?
My dream is to see each and every child getting, quality education.
Children as producers of knowledge and learning and experiences.
Having here, I think, has given me a new opportunity to dream, but also explore new ways through which this dream could be realized. And we have this feeling and energy that as a team, we can be able to do something to improve the education for children in Kenya.
My dream is that we build a system of public education that is something we can be proud of, something that we can yell from the mountaintops about how wonderful it is, where every child has access, every child has opportunity, every child has that just potential that's tapped into, and they're really able to thrive as a result of their education.
This program is almost magical for us because it's bringing people from 3 different continents together, from the South, Pakistan, Kenya and Brazil. And we believe that when people come together, trying to find that common core that will make a reform that lies at the the core or the heart of what will unleash learning for the children of all these countries.
O programa South-South, o surgimento dessa ideia, eu acho que é uma convergência de visões de como a gente podia formar lideranças do Sul global, como a gente podia fomentar coalizões para fazer reformas educacionais bem-sucedidas, que tivessem um engajamento grande de um grupo plural. E a gente conseguiu pensar como formar os public goods, né? Os materiais, como deixar um legado também de recursos educacionais e de referências sobre reformas educacionais bem-sucedidas.
O South-South surgiu de uma conversa entre Dennis Misny, que é o CEO da Fundação Lehman, e a Rachel Hinton do FCDO. E a ideia toda era, puxa, já tem tanta experiência bacana no Global South, né, no Sul Global, e as pessoas mesmo do Sul Global não conhecem.
We have 7 partners here who have come together, some who know each other quite well, some who are strangers, but we are organizing around this common aim, which is to bring people together, to be able to use coalitions better and more effectively, to understand where the challenges happen and how you can work through them when you have people with very different aims sometimes.
So what we wanted to ensure was that actually those who came together and actually had the opportunity to visit and see firsthand also brought their own experiences of reform, and bold reform, and reform that we knew already had an impact on learning.
And so our hope is that we discuss what we're producing with these education policy experts and really understand how to iteratively improve them so that when we publish them at the end of the year as a public goods library, hopefully people in other countries working in education policy, they are as good as they can be.
So I think we are united in this challenge of a lot of schooling but with very little learning, a lot of interventions happening everywhere in government and in civil society, but not united to bring the big impact to get every child to go to school but also to learn. How do we create a reform that is sustained over different governments and supported by both the government and the opposition at the same time?
So this is a unique journey of 100 people coming to Sao Paulo and from here going to Sobral to see what happened over there and what can we do when we return after learning from here. How do we elevate some of the solutions we may have in our country but have not been looking for it in that way.
I think first of all, I'm carrying back home the hope that if you have determination, will, and you have right kind of skill to manage a change, things are possible.
What I learned is that we have to bring everyone who matters around the table. So getting the politicians together rather than seeing them as not part of us. If politicians own this and drive the agenda, then we are more likely to succeed because it is them who even allocate resources and drive parents and other people easily.
And the authority given to the head teacher and the community to make decisions and have the trust to spend the money right and to give accounts to the people without a problem. I use this money for this reason and look, this is the outcome. So this outcome-based use of financing.
Education cannot be improved unless communities are at the center of it. So a school is the beating heart of a community.
Mas a escola não estava fazendo diferença na vida dos filhos e filhas porque os meninos não aprendiam. E eles não aprendiam porque eles não sabiam ler. Se você não sabe ler, como é que você vai resolver um problema de matemática? Como é que você vai entender a história? Como é que você vai entender geografia? Como é que você vai entender qualquer coisa?
Nós estávamos assim muito determinados a afastar qualquer tipo de justificativa com relação a não poder fazer, porque as crianças não poderiam se aprender por esse ou aquele motivo. Nós estamos determinados a garantir que todas se alfabetizassem.
Levando em consideração os aspectos históricos, os aspectos políticos, econômicos e, sobretudo, culturais de cada lugar. Não é? Primeiro, e entendendo que o protagonismo da implementação de uma política educacional nos estados e municípios deve ser os que dirigem aquele estado e os municípios. A gente tinha um projeto, sabia o que queria e iria enfrentar todos os desafios que se colocassem para ser concretizado aquele objetivo.
Kind of organization that I saw is what I'm carrying home. That opened my eyes. Education opens frontiers for those who use it well.
Taking with me that teachers can be energized and be very positive about their work.
Development of the skills that you acquire when you're in school can enable you to fit and be part of the society. Have the realization that they don't need to depend on other people for them to be transformed.
My job is to go back and connect our history and our tradition and our ideas with young people and their ability to lead.
Knowing that it is possible to go down to the local level and transform education in, say, 15, 18 years, it gives a lot of hope to people, right?
My dream is to see each and
Okay, thank you. Object.
So, So for all the South-South Fellows, we want to welcome Anna onto the stage to present certificates to all of those who successfully completed the training course and exchange of ideas and knowledge. So Anna. Hand them to you. You stand there, I'll hand them to you.
Oh, there. Of course, there's not here. Just, Ali. Ahmad. You're welcome. But stay for the photo. Ahmed.
You need to stand on the stage, otherwise you'll walk away.
You come and Ali. Yeah, you have to come. Yes. And this is Amna. Oh. So, Amna. Oh, okay. Bela, where are you? Yeah, come. Come get your certificate. Khyber. Khyber, it's your turn. Hey. Later. Yes. He left? Where's Simas? Fosia, your turn. Yeah, maybe.
So yeah,
Yes,
okay,
I can take his. Yeah, I think you saw him. I think Simon's is there. I'm quite sure I saw hers. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, you can double check from here.
Etasham.
I have Etasham.
Come on. I checked and double checked and
Because she's not a fellow. But Wasim is. Yeah, but Wasim hasn't come yet.
Hasn't come yet. I'll make sure she will receive hers. Come. So, Etasham. My pleasure. Yes.
I've checked it's not even inside. So what I'll do is I'll keep this, and when you're about to leave for Musharraf's office, and once other fellows like see Majmal comes, I'll add it to you.
Okay.